1 minute to air. The live stream has started. Thirty seconds.
Good evening. Welcome to the Durham Planning Commission. The members of the Durham Planning Commission have been appointed by the City Council and the County Board of Commissioners to make recommendations to the elected officials. You should know that the elected officials have the final say on any issue before us tonight. While this meeting is being conducted in person, it is also accessible using the Zoom virtual meeting platform. In the virtual meeting platform, public participants do not have the ability to talk or be seen on video by default. To maintain meeting decorum and a discernible record of the meeting, the chat function has been disabled. For those attending in person, if you plan to speak on an agenda item tonight, please go to the table to my left and sign up to speak. When speaking, please state your name and your address clearly when you come to the podium, and please speak directly into the microphone. And for those of you that arrived early and there was not a sign-up sheet for the comprehensive plan, there is now a sign-up sheet over there where you can sign up to speak. If you are attending the meeting virtually, you will be given the ability to speak at the appropriate time. If you have pre-registered, your name will be called for you to make your comments, just like in an in-person public hearing. You may also call in during the meeting tonight by dialing 1-301-715-8592. If you call in during the meeting, you will need to wait until the particular public hearing you are interested in starts. After all the pre-registered speakers have shared their comments, I will ask if there is anyone else wishing to speak. At that point, you will need to digitally raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone, and when recognized, state your name and address before making your comments. Time may be limited for speakers depending on the length of the agenda. Throughout the process to draft a new comprehensive plan, materials and engagement opportunities have been provided in English and Spanish in order to increase language access for the community. In keeping with that, simultaneous interpretation in Spanish will be provided for all public hearings related to the comprehensive plan, both in person and virtually. For all other meetings, interpretation will continue to be available upon request. Finally, all motions are stated in the affirmative, so if a motion fails or ties, the recommendation is for denial. Thank you, and may we have roll call.
Chair Amendolia.
Here.
Vice Chair Cameron.
Here.
Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Commissioner Cutright.
Here.
Commissioner Chigares.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner McIver.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan.
Here.
Commissioner Cease.
Here.
Commissioner Valentine. And Commissioner Trapp won't be here this evening.
Great. Thank you. With that, we have quorum. So I have been reviewing our rules of procedures, and so there may be some new things we do tonight. One of those things is we do not have to vote on excused absences. per our rules and procedures, so we're not going to. We're going to save some time and move forward. So we're going to move to our next agenda item, approval of the minutes and consistency statements from January 10th, 2023. Does anybody have any comments or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, moved by Vice Chair Cameron, seconded by, reversed. Moved by Commissioner Baker, seconded by Vice Chair Cameron. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have adjustments to the agenda. Another new thing is that we don't have to vote to move the order of our agenda. We only have to vote to add items to our agenda. And so I am going to ask for unanimous consent to move the item under new business to amend our calendar up to be ahead of our public hearings. If anyone wants to talk about that, you can say I consent at this time. Great, so we're going to do that now. So we are planning to hold an additional meeting in March, on March 28th at 5:30 p.m. to have our second public hearing discussing the comprehensive plan. And we need to amend our calendar to add that meeting to the agenda. Can I get a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Vice Chair Cameron. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. It's going to be very useful later on. Okay, with that, I believe we can go straight into our public hearings, and we will begin. So we have no zoning map changes tonight, which I'm sure some folks will find a relief. Instead, we will begin with text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, and we'll begin with case TC 21/007, accessibility and walkability. And we will begin with the staff report.
Hello, good evening. Brooke Roper with the City County Planning Department. I'm happy to be here with you all this evening. I'm just going to pull up the slides really quickly. There we go. So on to the next slide. The Improving Access and Walkability Text Amendment is a change to the Unified Development Ordinance initiated by Planning Commission with the goal of making a more connected community. The Planning Commission unanimously passed this amendment resolution, formerly called the Block Length Amendment, to be shared with staff for further review, analysis, and recommendation in July 2021. Over 2022, planning staff have carried out research and looked into various case studies to create a draft amendment that has gone through numerous revisions by other city and county staff, along with members of the Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. To achieve the goal of making a more connected community, the amendment proposes various rules for developers, which would limit the length of streets and promote more pedestrian connections to nearby existing networks. The amendment includes updates to the existing connectivity ratio that ensures developers are providing sufficient road and pedestrian networks within new developments and adequately connecting to adjacent areas. Just as a quick note, the connectivity ratio is the number of street links divided by nodes, or also called the link node ratio. Links may be streets, stub outs, transit stops, and pedestrian or bicycle facilities, and nodes may be cul-de-sacs and intersections. The ratio helps to provide insight as to how connected a development may be. The amendment also includes a new block length component, which limits the allowed length of streets or street blocks that developers can build to help ensure communities are built to human scale, closely connected, and walkable. After sharing internally, the draft was shared for a 2-month-long engagement opportunity starting in October 22. Input received from this engagement included 29 comments on the Growth Management Social Pinpoint Engagement Initiative page, which were reviewed and used to further modify the amendment. This engagement summary may be seen in Attachment C. Moving on to the next slide, as I mentioned, we've carried out some research and case study review for various communities, including Fayetteville, Raleigh, and Kannapolis, to better understand what standards would best work for Durham. We found that there are many ways to measure and require connectivity to promote access, and block standards and link node ratio requirements often vary, and there are no general standards typically used across communities. The Planning Commission subcommittee who initiated this process seemed to review the Kannapolis Development Ordinance. The tables shown on this slide are from Kannapolis and include the block length requirements, a minimum connectivity ratio, and a minimum vehicle access point requirement. While staff used the case studies to begin forming and updating our own standards, we have created distinct requirements for Durham. Moving on, the UDO text amendment is a revision to the requirements in section 13.6, 13.4, 12.3, and 12.2. For a quick overview, in section 13.6, street connectivity requirements, updates include expanding the definition of links and nodes to include pedestrian, transit, and bicycle infrastructure, an updated scoring matrix which prioritizes more desirable modes of transportation, and updated graphics to better visualize the different link and node types. Just as a quick note, the different types of links and nodes have been weighted and scored differently based on how specific infrastructure adds to connectivity and how it contributes to the scoring matrix. So a higher scoring link equates to a more desirable link. Conversely, a higher scoring node equates to a less desirable node. The graphic on this slide shows a development with a score of 1.8. This would be a high score since it provides an additional pedestrian connection and higher links to nodes. Moving on to the next slide. Section 13.4, block standards, provides developers an alternative option to follow instead of standards set forth in 13.6. The updates to this section include new standards for maximum block length and maximum block perimeter that are generally based on other case studies and the 15-minute walk. The graphic on the slide shows context for what block length and block perimeter are. A 15-minute walk, which is supported in the complete neighborhoods, resources for thriving lives objective of the comprehensive plan, is generally understood to be 3/4 of a mile, or approximately 4,000 feet. The new standards are based on areas we would like to see in the future. The first grouping of zoning districts seen in the table on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, which are generally districts intended to be denser, more walkable areas, would allow someone on average to walk 11 blocks in 15 minutes. The second grouping would be 5.5 blocks in 15 minutes, and the third is 4 blocks in 15 minutes. Next. Lastly, staff have updated section 12.3, streets, to reduce the lineal feet of required stubouts, and revise section 12.2, ingress and egress requirements, to include new standards for minimum pedestrian access points and a new single building apartment complex exemption. Thank you. That concludes the staff presentation. We're available to hear any comments and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Baker, who chaired the subcommittee that worked on these proposed changes, to tell us a little bit more and give us some more context.
I'll be brief. So we started the policy committee in June of 2020. As everybody remembers, there was a lot going on in June of 2020. We held 5 meetings over the course of the existence of the committee. It started with myself, Commissioner Carmen Williams, and a few others. And as commission turned over, we lost some people and added some people. Commissioner Amendolia ended up on the committee. And we formed the committee for a few reasons. One was an observation of consistent issues with applications that we kept seeing day in and day out, and a little bit of a frustration on our end, and a feeling that something needed to be done. There was a recognition of the many grassroots movements and the need for and the calling out for some policy change. We wanted to address equity and sustainability. We wanted to address some of the widespread issues with some of the large rezoning cases and annexation cases of kind of the low-density auto-oriented sprawl that we regularly see at the Planning Commission that go into City Council. And then we also wanted to address sort of the review process and make that more predictable for everyone, for residents, developers, Planning Commission staff, et cetera. So we then created a draft charge. We gave ourselves a charge. It was to recognize all of the popular movements in Durham and around the country to address the climate crisis, systemic racism, and need for more public empowerment. The Planning Commission Policy Committee was charged to do the following: to formulate targeted amendments to the UDO that address key equity and sustainability zoning issues, and to propose recommendations to City Council and County Commission regarding land use policy. We then also assigned ourselves principles, and we had 5 principles that we operated under. I won't go through those. We wanted deep engagement from across the Planning Commission so that it wasn't just 3 or 4 of us that were moving something forward when the rest of the commission might not be on board with it. So we wanted to build buy-in, and we developed a poll. We provided a list of every single comprehensive planning related policy to all of the planning commissioners. We asked all of the planning commissioners how well each of them thought that each of those planning policies was being implemented, because we're, as a planning commission, very familiar with them. We found commissioners only felt that 4% of the comprehensive plans policies were being very well implemented. On the other hand, commissioners felt that 32% of planning policies needed more implementation and 30% needed significantly more implementation. We took that information, we assigned scores to every planning-related policy based on planning commissioner responses, in order to prioritize which planning policies to tackle first, because we wanted to tackle a lot of these issues. We also held open discussions among planning commissioners about what we should be working on. The result of that, we developed some work items to include, number 1, street connectivity and block length standards, pedestrian-oriented design standards, green building standards and incentives, new and revised suburban tier walkable zoning districts, public park dedication standards, and then develop memoranda to present recommendations for more just, equitable, accessible development review process and system, recommendations on planning functions, services, and regulations, and recommendations on growth management and fiscal assessments. So we tackled the first item first. We thought it was low-hanging fruit, and we could move it forward quickly. We drafted the connectivity and block length amendments ourselves. It was a half a page. Then we drafted a resolution to initiate a text amendment. This has never been done before by the Planning Commission. We brought each of them forward to the broader Planning Commission for discussion and comment in early 2021, and then we brought them back to the Planning Commission for a vote in the summer of 2021, and that's where we unanimously voted to approve the resolution that moved these amendments forward, put them in staff's hands, and then staff worked through the process as they laid out. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background about why this is in front of us and all the work that went into it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited that we are getting to move this forward tonight. At this time, we're going to open the public hearing, and we will start with any public comment that folks want to make. If you are in attendance in person and would like to speak, you can come to the podium to my right at this time to provide comment. And then if you are in the Zoom meeting and would like to provide comment, please raise your hand at this time. So I see one person come in to speak in person, Mr. John Talmadge. Let me go ahead and state your name and address and provide your 2 minutes of comments.
Thank you. Members of the Planning Commission, I'm John Talmadge. I live at 910 Virgie Street in the Old West Durham neighborhood, and I'm the executive director of Bike Durham, a local nonprofit advocacy organization here working for safe, affordable, and sustainable transportation for everyone in Durham, regardless of who they are or where they live. And I'm here speaking in support of the walkability and connectivity text amendments that are before you. I have with me the signatures of 342 residents who also support the work that was initiated by the Planning Commission, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate the work of the staff in developing the details, which, as they were described, are very difficult to follow. But that's the way that this should work, right? That there is a movement among the residents of Durham for a change in the built environment. We want our streets to be safe for people to walk. Bike Durham's work has largely been focused on the existing streets and neighborhoods, but we realize in a fast-growing community that we need to be catching up with the change that is happening all the time, and that our new developments should also be building in the walkability, the short blocks, the connectivity to the neighboring developments, so that we're not forcing everybody to get in their cars to go down to the school that's across the street or next door, that there are connections between neighborhoods to get to these destinations. So I've emailed the petition to all of you with the language that we used in the cover. I'll share this with the clerk, and I thank you again for your consideration of these text amendments.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to go ahead and read the petition into the record so we have it in the public record. So we have Bike Durham petition in support of walkability text amendments to the Durham Unified Development Ordinance. We strongly support these text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance that will enhance access and walkability in new developments in Durham. For too long, Durham has had development rules that allow poor connectivity for walking or biking to nearby schools, businesses, places of worship, parks, and even adjacent neighborhoods. Durham is growing fast, and now is the time to require connectivity, sidewalks, and bicycle facilities that will improve access for the coming development. We thank the Planning Commission for taking the step to initiate these changes, and will support them when they are recommended to the City Council and County Commission. Each of the 342 signers of this petition was presented with the following information. Durham is growing rapidly, including on its suburban periphery. Much of this development has poor connectivity and is not walkable. This is allowed under current development rules. Last summer, the Durham Planning Commission initiated a text amendment to the development rules with the goal of making a more connected community. To achieve this goal, the amendment proposes various rules for developers which would limit the length of streets and promote more pedestrian connections to nearby existing networks. These rules will help ensure new developments are well connected to the surrounding area and neighborhoods, and ensure they are pedestrian/bicyclist friendly. Support for improved access and walkability has been a consistent desire for Durham residents throughout the development of the comprehensive plan. From this feedback, the planning staff has created the transportation goal and community objectives for the draft comprehensive plan. The improving access and walkability text amendment will help to take us one step closer to the transportation goal and objectives by introducing more pedestrian and bicycle-friendly development requirements. The Planning Commission needs to hear that there is strong community support before moving this recommendation to the City Council for approval. Please sign this petition today. And then there are 15 pages of people who signed this petition. It's great work. With that, I would like to continue public comment and give other folks the chance to provide comments who wish to speak. I see no one else at the podium at this time. I do see one person in the Zoom meeting, Michelle Bush. Michelle, you'll have 2 minutes to provide your public comments.
3 p.m. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Michelle Bush. I live in North Durham. I am a visually impaired person. I'm legally blind. And I just want to encourage, I'd like to thank everybody for the work that's been done and Engage Durham. And I'd like to encourage the powers that be on Engage Durham to remember the visually impaired people and make sure that there's inclusion for the blind and low vision communities, that we be considered. Many times we are unfortunately not remembered, that we need accessibility. I would like to encourage that there be more at the crosswalks, technology that will allow us to safely cross along with other people who have vision, and for the Mr. Talmadge that was talking about walkability, we'd also like to be included in that and be able to enjoy Durham as people with vision. That's really what I wanted to say, that we be included in whatever documents you make up. If you would also make an accessible copy for us. It's hard sometimes to follow image formatting. That's unfortunate for us, but that's the way it is. So if you could remember to include us both in the actual work and the information that is dispersed, we would certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open it up to Planning Commissioner question and deliberation. Who would like to start? Commissioner Cease.
Hi, thank you, and thanks thanks to staff, and particularly for navigating what is a really complex objective to incorporate into a zoning ordinance. Connectivity has been central to my work for 23 years in urban design and planning, and I've tackled the writing of ordinances exactly for this purpose. And there is always a lot of unforeseen circumstances to try to incorporate in an ordinance versus incorporating in a design where you're in control of everything at the scale of the site. So I want to start with acknowledging that effort that of course originated as well with commissioners also. So a couple of questions, just procedural and or technical questions for staff, and then just a few comments. So I don't know, Brooke, if you're the best person to tackle these. The first question I have is just, and some of this is for purposes of clarifying for the record and for everyone, just confirming that we've now added the block length criteria to the ordinance, but the length node ratio as a mechanism for calculating connectivity still applies. It's an either or. Yes,
that's correct. You can essentially choose either or.
Okay. And in the connectivity based on links and nodes, I see that the pedestrian passages, mid-block pedestrian passages, among other things, are also included. But in the definition, or I should say in the diagram, and you pointed out in your presentation as well, that the pedestrian link was one connecting just at the end of a cul-de-sac, the terminus of a street. And so my question is this: with the definition of nodes, I believe, is specified as 2 or more streets that are intersecting or the terminus of a street. Are we sure as staff that we are accommodating sufficiently in those definitions the ability for a mid-block pedestrian passage to count, a mid-block pedestrian linkage? And I'll get to why I think this is an important question in a moment. But, so it doesn't have to be a street, right, to meet the connectivity ratio. You could have a mid-block pedestrian passage, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm trying to better understand your question.
So in the definition of nodes, it specifically references, I think, 2 or more streets constitutes a node, or the terminus of a street.
Right. So in the definition, yeah, it does just reference streets at this time.
But in the calculation of a node, so this is the question. Maybe I'll state it more broadly. Is conceptually staff's opinion that mid-block pedestrian passages and/or non-vehicular links satisfies the connectivity objectives? Or is it only where it is connecting at a cul-de-sac?
It would be the first, so it would be, a cul-de-sac would be one type of node, but any other type of intersection would also constitute a node.
Okay, I guess,
So
it's table one is what I'm addressing. And additional pedestrian connections are listed there as a link. I just want to make sure that they suffice as a link in instances other than just located at the end of a cul-de-sac, at the terminus of a street.
All right, I think, we want to make sure we hear you correctly, because you're right, this is very technical and can be very confusing. You're saying a mid-block terminus for a pedestrian connection isn't included and it should be?
Well, mid-block is included in the definition of links,
Correct,
but
not in the nodes.
But the node definition just refers to intersecting streets or the terminus of a street.
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
So what is the scenario? The reason this is so difficult is because this is a very abstract exercise, right? The block length is much more straightforward. And so I'm just trying to, is staff's opinion that a mid-block pedestrian passage, which by definition is not at the end of a cul-de-sac, qualifies and is valued in this whole connectivity exercise?
yeah, so that would be considered a link if it is connecting.
Well, maybe before this advances or when it advances to council, there should be, or there could be some attention just confirming that definition-wise, node also acknowledges that. Because I see it on the link side, I don't see it on the node side.
Yeah, we can definitely work to confirm that.
Okay, sorry, that was what I thought was going to be about 30 seconds. Apologies for not being clear. So the other question I have is just on the other, on the block length table, the other table one, what was the thinking behind 1 acre being the minimum site size to which the block standards would apply?
Yeah, so we've used multiple case studies to kind of inform this work. I believe Raleigh also has similar acreage requirements for minimum site acreage. We decided on these in particular as a group. It's a smaller minimum acreage for the first set of zoning districts, which are intended to be denser, and that was kind of the thinking behind that.
Okay, again, conceptually, I'm thoroughly on board with the objectives here, but I do have concerns about that being a really small number, essentially a 200-foot by 200-foot parcel. And I think I see a scenario where that would encumber a development of a relatively small parcel that otherwise is in a existing neighborhood, that could really be impactful. But I trust your judgment. I would just like that to be reconsidered before it moves forward to council.
Yeah, we can.
Just that one alone.
For sure. Yeah, we can consider that.
So Jen, I'll close with just a couple of comments. feel as though the exceptions that are listed are very broadly crafted, almost to the point that they may be just really difficult to enforce in terms of intent. It's particularly the first three in the list of 5, I believe it is. So I would just be very careful not to suggest that you haven't been, but I'd like to see how that plays out in a few scenarios. I think applicants could argue fairly, in a fairly defendable way that to get out of providing the connectivity that's desired through the ordinance. So that's one concern. Secondly, the way this is packaged in our red line version of the ordinance, it includes, rightfully, the ways in which streets are defined, and a lot of the conventional, this is not about block lengths, it's about the street. So we heard from the speaker who joined us via Zoom, and we've heard from Mr. Talmadge and his organization that a lot of the interest, we heard from Commissioner Baker, the interest in this is derived out of encouraging multiple modes of transit and making it viable, making it easy for pedestrian connectivity, bike connectivity, non-vehicular connectivity. And as long as we have incorporated in our ordinance standards that are ultimately, that privilege, I'll put it this way, that privilege vehicular connectivity on conventional kind of DOT engineering terminology, we're not going to get to the place that we all want to be. We're not going to get to the place that those who are interested in this connectivity want to be. What happens between the curb and curb distance is really significant in terms of the Vision Zero safety objectives that are articulated, and some of this will come up in the comprehensive plan later as well. And so I wish that we would also have equal attention to the other portions in the text amendment documentation that speak to defaulting to NCDOT standards, AASHTO standards, and some of the other conventional standards without recognizing what is also an accepted street design organization in the United States today, and that's NACTO, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, because until we shift that kind of institutional inertia, then we're only we're limited on what we can achieve. So I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Cease. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, are we ready for a motion at this time?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. We take, I guess I would ask for a motion to take text amendment TC 22/07, the improved access and walkability text amendment to be forwarded to the City Council and County Commissioner with a favorable recommendation.
Second. Moved by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Baker. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, may we have the roll call vote?
Chair Amendolia,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cameron,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright,
Yes.
Commissioner Chigaris,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner McIver,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Cease,
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine,
Yes.
Commissioner Carmen Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuri Williams.
Yes.
The motion carries 12-0.
Thank you. I'd just like to comment on how much better things are when you have grassroots organizing that gets stuff done. With that, we'll move on to our headliner for the evening, our public hearing on the new comprehensive plan. So before we get started, I want to talk briefly just about the overall process for these public hearings, because it's going to be a process. Tonight is our first public hearing on the comprehensive plan, but it will not be our last. I can guarantee you that we will not be voting on the comprehensive plan tonight. We, as I think I mentioned earlier, we'll have an additional meeting on March 28th, where we will hold our second public hearing for the comprehensive plan. And then the intent is to have our final public hearing in the month of May so that we can make our final decision and move this along to the City Council and the Board of County Commissioners. At this time, we don't have a meeting in April for this, and we will determine later if we need one. Hopefully, we can do it in just 3 meetings. As far as the format of those meetings, the goal is to prioritize most of the public comment period during the February and March meetings. We will reserve the right to not have public comment at every meeting because we need to be able to deliberate and make our decision on this case. We will do so while balancing the public's right to provide comment. Additionally, when we get to the March meeting, that meeting will prioritize giving people who have not yet had a chance to provide public comment to speak. And so the goal is that if you speak tonight, that in March, we will be giving other people the opportunity to speak who haven't attended yet, just learned that this process was happening, et cetera. Apart from receiving public comment tonight, the purpose of tonight's meeting for the planning commissioners is primarily going to be to provide an initial set of comments and questions for staff so that staff has the information they need to prepare for our next 2 meetings where we will start making decisions and casting votes on recommendations, making changes and updates to the comprehensive plan, et cetera. To that end, there may be questions that we ask tonight that don't get answered, and that is okay. We will get the answer to them later at the appropriate time. I also want to ask that as we go through the public comment phase, if somebody else is saying the things that you want to say and you agree with them, I would ask that you not come up and just repeat everything that a person before you said so that we can try and be efficient. And if you would like to express support for something that somebody is saying, I would encourage folks to raise a hand or so show some sort of signal that they are in agreement with the person who is speaking. Obviously, we will give everyone who wishes to speak a chance to speak, but I would like it if we don't have 20 people saying the same thing. I think that is all I wanted to say on the format. Before we get started, let's go ahead. Yeah, sorry, we'll go ahead and start with the staff presentation, and then I'll blabber on later.
Great. Thank you, Austin. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Miller. I'm part of the comprehensive planning team that's been working on this effort over the last several years, part of the City County Planning Department. Our team is really excited to be in front of you all today after a lot of work that's gone into this with a full draft of the plan to hear discussion and comments around and bring some final improvements to it as we get to the finish line with this project. Despite the challenges of developing this plan almost completely during the pandemic, we believe that it reflects a genuine effort to listen to and respond to and work with residents to set a different path forward for how we're doing this work and to come up with a plan that's really balancing the needs of all of our different residents. We could not have done this work without all of the residents that have participated and helped in various ways along the way. We are super appreciative, and I know we've gained so much from those interactions and that work together. In addition, we've had significant collaboration with city and county department staff through this process, whether that's on technical aspects of the plan or on work around engaging residents together. That has also been a huge part of our effort, and we thank them as well. So just a quick overview of what we're going to focus on this evening. We're going to talk briefly about the overall engagement process for the plan. The memo that went along with the agenda this evening provides details on community engagement for everything since the community goals and objectives were adopted in June of 2021. And that memo is referenced as well. All of that is accessible for those who are interested. It includes links to engagement summaries and previous draft versions of the different plan components. So we won't go into a great amount of detail on the engagement this evening, but we are happy to answer questions about any of that work. So the primary focus of our presentation tonight is going to be to walk through the major sections of the plan and to provide some examples of how each of those might be used. And our recommendation this evening is that you all open the public hearing, hear public comment, and consider the recommendation of the plan. So this slide is showing a timeline. Our project began in November of 2019 with a listening and learning phase. We had a phase focused on development and revision of the community goals and objectives, March 2020 to June 2021. Work around the place site map and guide, and then the policies and actions was from June 2021 to August 2022. Our implementation list and full draft plan were developed beginning in September of this past year through this month, and then we are now in the adoption process. So just kind of a big picture understanding of where we've been in this process and where we are. So we have a couple of images on the screen here, a screenshot of the Equitable Community Engagement Blueprint, a screenshot of our Engage Durham website, where we've used that site to try and collaborate across projects and really have one place where residents can get information. And a screenshot of one of the early engagement phases, residents writing their different responses to the question, what's on your mind about Durham? In the engagement process for this project, we have worked to remove barriers to better reach Durham residents in this process than we've done in the past. Some of the examples of how we've shifted our work has been trying to use more accessible language, which we are always striving to improve, to proactively share information on the project through a long list of community groups and organizations and ask for their help in spreading information and opportunities to get involved. We've worked to improve ADA accessibility through our work, to provide things like food and childcare for in-person meetings, to provide virtual options, and to have meetings out in the community where it can be more convenient for residents to participate. As part of all of our engagement, we've asked residents to respond to demographic questions. With that information, we've been able to see how effective our work to make engagement more accessible has been, and to see who we are still not reaching as we do that. As we understood who we were reaching, we then made special additional efforts to engage residents that hold identities that were not represented in those residents engaged so far. That has included at different points throughout the project more engagement with youth, with rural residents, with Spanish-speaking residents, with low-income residents, residents with disabilities, and residents in historically marginalized communities. Our goal in this has been to reach a more representative cross-section of Durham residents across many different demographic identities. As part of this work, we've summarized each phase of our engagement, the process, and the demographic data for each of those phases, and we've published that alongside de-identified resident input for transparency and accountability, so that anyone in the community has access to what we're hearing so they can see how we're responding to that. We have not done this work perfectly. We are continually trying to welcome feedback and improve our process so that we can continue to better engage residents as we go through this work. I also want to mention that our work towards equity and equitable engagement does not exclude people from having their voice matter. We have sought input from residents in Durham in this process, from all residents, and work to incorporate their input into the plan. Our work towards equity does mean that because resources have been inequitably distributed in the past, we've put some additional resources toward our work towards equity. And in addition to our focus on equitable engagement, we've also worked to ensure that we're working towards equitable outcomes. In the plan, you'll see where we specifically call out groups who've been left out or harmed by planning in the past. You see this in the plan where we say particularly or especially in a clause for policies after calling out a specific need in the community. This language does not mean that there are residents we don't want to see this outcome for. This language means that because we know that there are inequities in our past, that in order to work to overcome those, we need to name and specifically work towards ensuring those outcomes, that everyone in the community ends up benefiting from this work. We've listened to the input we've received, we've shared that publicly for transparency, and we've done our best through this work to incorporate it into a plan that can work for our full community. I'm going to talk just a little bit about our release of the full draft plan. It was released in a fully accessible PDF in both English and Spanish on Engage Durham and our social pinpoint site on January 20th. We've put a lot of effort into making this accessible both in a ADA way as well as a user-friendly sort of way that's intentionally organized so that the most important pieces of this plan are really linked together and reflect the interconnectedness of these things. So the way the plan is organized is intended to show how the plan pieces work together. Early on, as we were hearing from residents, we heard a lot of interconnected themes and topics. We have focused on specific topics in the policies and specific tools with the place type map and the place type descriptions in order to organize the plan. And the plan is heavily cross-referenced to try and easily connect those different portions together. For example, when we talk about neighborhoods, as we know, that can touch housing, green space, transportation, schools, access to jobs. We've tried to make clear how those things are interconnected in the way that the plan is organized. So we also wanted to briefly talk about kind of big picture concepts in the plan. What are the things that we're working towards? And in particular, call out some of the differences between what we're going for with this plan, what our policy priorities are, versus the 2005 comprehensive plan. So the past plan established the suburban tier, which acted as an urban growth boundary, and essentially said, let's fill out to our edges with a lot of single-family housing. This plan focuses on encouraging development to fill more in within our existing footprint, where there are stronger connections to existing water, sewer, and transportation infrastructure, and also allowing us to protect more of our sensitive environmental lands, trees, and rural character in parts of the county. With this plan, we are trying to better connect the planning and building of critical infrastructure with the building of new development by establishing future growth areas within the urban growth boundary. These areas have infrastructure investments that have been identified as needed in order to support development. We also heard repeatedly from residents concerns about how disconnected accessing the things that they need in their daily lives are. Things like getting groceries, going to daycare, going to a doctor's appointment, that they're having to go all over town. So this concept of a more complete community where people have access to those things without necessarily having to get into a car. That has played out both in the policies that we've developed and in the ways that place types are mapped in our community. We've also tried to focus transportation policy around things that are not just cars. A lot of our planning in the past has been very car-centric. We have transportation policies that are very people-oriented, that prioritize safety for our most vulnerable road users. We also have place types and policies that encourage some existing places that are more car-oriented to become more walkable and transit-ready over time. In addition, we've tried to focus housing, including affordable housing, on existing or planned high-quality and high-frequency transit routes through our policies and through the place type mapping. which includes the placement of transit opportunity areas and mixed-use neighborhood place types along transit corridors. We also have prioritized the affordability and the diversity of different types of housing through the policies and through the place type mapping, looking at both the affordability of housing and people's access to housing, including different types of housing so that people can choose neighborhoods or developments that have multiple options for the types of homes available. We also have spent some time thinking about how we use the resources that we have wisely as a community, how we prepare for the impacts of climate change, how our community can be better prepared for a future pandemic or extreme climate events through the policy work. In addition, creating the recreation and open space place type to identify protected lands like conservation areas, floodplains, wetlands, and natural heritage areas, and having policies and a place type that focus on farmland preservation. Finally, our work has focused on working towards equity. Particularly in our work with residents, we've had an opportunity to talk about and examine possible unintended consequences of the policies in this plan, and our work with residents has been essential in helping to focus on that. The last thing I will talk about before I hand this over to Kayla is just a little bit about how the plan is used. There are three primary ways that we envision the plan primarily being used. The first is to guide decisions by y'all and our local elected officials on annexation or zoning map change requests. For example, if a property owner wants to change what's allowed to be built on their property. In addition, it'll be used to guide the work of other departments and agencies in the community, for example, determining where new water and sewer lines should or should not be extended and where schools should be planned. And finally, to determine the focus of the planning department's work, to establish the department's work program, and for updating the rules for development that are in the Unified Development Ordinance. So for the Planning Commission's purview, you all see annexations and zoning map change requests. Staff will use the comprehensive plan to help you assess and provide guidance on how consistent any given proposal is with the place type map and the policies. Additionally, y'all review and provide comments on any other planning department work like studies and plans and UDO text amendments, and staff will also use the comprehensive plan to assess how those new projects and meet the intent of the comprehensive plan or might necessitate changes to the comprehensive plan in the future. That I will hand it over to Kayla.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Seibel. I'm a senior planner at the City County Planning Department. I'm going to finish out our presentation. So we're going to walk through each major section, give an overview, and talk about the ways they are used by Planning Commission and staff. For our other audiences, like residents, developers, community organizations, and elected officials, the plan discusses how the plan should be used on page 8. For the table of contents, there's a snapshot shown here on the slide. Every major section of the plan has been shared with residents and revised after each engagement phase. The new content for this full draft are brief context and background sections, short summary pages between each section to orient our readers, and the implementation section, which we'll describe later on. So as many of you know, we started this project with the listening and learning phase, which led to language that formed the guiding values in the community goals and objectives. We workshopped the language with residents to make sure that the foundation of the plan is strong and reflected the needs and priorities of residents. This section of the plan was adopted by City Council and the County Commission in June 2021. The graphic on the screen is a depiction of the writing process to show how we use residents' input to form the objectives. And subsequent parts of the plan relied on the community goals and objectives for direction, and staff from the growth management team used them as interim guidance on rezoning cases, which you may have seen referenced over the past year. In the plan document, the guiding values and community goals and objectives have not changed from the adopted version. They are organized by the goals to help orient readers to topics the plan affects in our community. On this slide are snapshots from the plan for the guiding values and the community goals and objectives. So the community goals and objectives are especially important for understanding the real-life impacts of government decisions. The objectives are also very detailed and have supporting quotes to give as much context to this plan as possible. On the slide, the snapshots, you can see the quotes alongside the objectives. And when we started to parse out the feedback that we received into topics and categories to find what we can impact the most from a comprehensive plan, we struggled. Our lives and the way we experience our neighborhoods and communities are very interconnected. All the pieces of a neighborhood are experienced as one, not necessarily in these discrete topics like housing, transportation, environment, or infrastructure. However, for this plan to be useful for staff and Planning Commission, a document that we can work with, we did our best to break down objectives and policies into categories while pointing to relevant objectives and policies throughout the document. And interwoven through everything is a focus on equity. So we hope that staff and Planning Commission will use the goals and objectives to further clarify intent about how we grow as a community and who is impacted and who should be prioritized. The next section of the document is the growth management strategy. So this is a set of broad strategies that inform how the city and county make decisions about where to direct new development, what infrastructure to invest in, and what kind of development to approve. So while the place types, which we'll talk about later, help us understand what residents desire for specific sites, the growth management strategy takes a comprehensive view of how larger areas may change. There are 3 broad strategies that Durham should use together to limit city expansion, manage orderly growth and development, and encourage small-scale changes in existing neighborhoods. We'll take those ideas one by one in the next few slides, and this is just a snapshot of what's in the plan on the slide here. So looking at the 15-minute community, and for folks who are following at home or in the audience, it's on page 107. We've pasted here what's directly in the plan. This is really important context for how the maps you'll see later on were created. So during engagement, residents seemed to really like the idea that no matter where you live, you can access what you need by foot, bike, or transit ride within a 15-minute trip. There are a lot of benefits to having our communities add the things they need over time and increase access equitably to housing, jobs, transit, grocery stores, green space, and so on. So this section talks about how our community has developed over time, has segregated uses, segregated people, and left communities isolated, disconnected, and reliant on cars. These main points on the slide demonstrate how, if we are implementing this concept well, residents can see change over time. The next concept, the next strategy is the urban growth boundary, which is to limit city expansion, and it's called the establishment of the urban growth boundary. So in the 2005 comprehensive plan, the one we have now, it established a development tier system that helped distinguish different types or amounts of growth in Durham. In that plan, the suburban tier boundary acted as an urban growth boundary. So the rural tier, which includes all the areas outside that suburban tier boundary, was to remain rural in character, and areas within the suburban tier were envisioned to urbanize. So this new comprehensive plan proposes not to retain that tier system with the different categories, but establishes one boundary, an urban growth boundary instead. So this is an area beyond which annexations and utility extensions should not occur, limiting significant development beyond that line. The proposed urban growth boundary is smaller than that previously approved suburban tier, so we found some ways to reduce that. And just one caveat, as we've been getting questions, being within that urban growth boundary does not mean that there are plans to change water and sewer services to existing homes. And we can answer more questions about that later. You can see here the related policies about the urban growth boundary in the plan. Okay, one other technical thing. So because the urban growth boundary would limit the land available for development in Durham, we've gotten questions about how this would impact housing demand. So to accommodate our 2050 population growth projections, we need about 60,000 new housing units, give or take. This chart shows how many of the place types, which are on the map that we'll talk about later, can accommodate using reasonable densities and build-out scenarios. So this is an estimate. So based on this chart, we can accommodate about 150,000 new units within the proposed urban growth boundary. So remember, 60,000 was what the projection is, and using our calculation here, we can accommodate about 150,000 new units. Okay. Next strategy, so working alongside that urban growth boundary are the future growth areas. These could become the next places to see development activity. They're generally found on the fringes of the city limits, as you can see on the map. On the map, there's hatched areas that are called out with labels. Future growth areas, there are parts of Durham within that urban growth boundary that are currently undeveloped or sparsely developed and need critical infrastructure upgrades, like water, sewer, or fire service, to serve new development. So these infrastructure upgrades, they could be provided over time through city and county departments or long-range service planning, funding through the city and county capital improvement programs, or development by private investment. Future growth areas are represented as a boundary on the place type map, and the place types underneath of that hatch give guidance on what eventually would be desired in that area. You can see an example on the slide of Fletcher's Chapel and Stallings Road area. It's a black hatch mark, and then underneath you see the color for the place types there. So these concepts will show up in your staff reports when a development case is submitted. Staff will share what the implications are for cases that appear outside the urban growth boundary or within these future growth areas. And they'll share that information with the development team and with you all. Okay. The next section of the plan, policies and actions. So these policies came from an 8-month process with policy working groups and then shared with residents and revised over this past summer. We shared the final revised versions in October with residents. So this section lists all the policies under those larger umbrella topics, like housing. This is an example of the housing topic. Then we nested similar policies under themes. So in this example, one theme is affordable housing, and then you can see several policies listed underneath there. Alongside these bigger topics, these themes, in each section is a list of action items. These come after each policy topic so that residents can see how policies can lead to actions. And these groupings are around key issues that we've heard are important to Durham residents. Also in this section of the plan, we've indicated policies with a D symbol to show which ones we think will be most impactful on new development proposals to help our staff and our planning commission narrow their focus, because the comprehensive plan covers a lot of things, and some of it is not all related to new development. Policies, again, will show up in your staff reports about a development case. And I did want to mention on page 169, there are administrative policies that help us know what to do in the event that there needs to be changes to the plan or changes to the place type map. And finally, many of these policies lead to changes in the Unified Development Ordinance. We will be using these and the actions to start the UDO rewrite process when the plan is approved. All right, the next major section of the plan is the place type map. This will replace the future land use map that we use now. It creates more categories than our current plan does. They're more specific, yet they're still broad and flexible to describe what kind of development is desired for specific sites. There are 20 place type categories and descriptions in the plan that get at desired characteristics of these places. So on the screen here, is just a snapshot of a neighborhood services place type. And you can see it's a long description and it has a list of characteristics that go along with it. So these place types are placed on the map, and some are what we have now, the current conditions, and many of them describe how those places may change in the future. And some are places that we don't yet have in Durham. So one example of how the place types and that growth management strategy I mentioned earlier work together in the 15-minute community concept. There's a desire to have a mix of housing types everywhere, but in some places, especially neighborhoods that are already built out or have limited opportunities for larger mixed-use sites, we use the apartment and townhouse neighborhood place type to identify those small infill sites that are too small for a mix of uses, but are a way to introduce a variety of housing in that area. And it's in the weeds example, but it's something that's come up recently. So we envision that these place types will be translated and further detailed as zoning districts in the upcoming UDO rewrite. So along with the policies, you will see the place type map referenced in staff reports. And I mentioned earlier that there are policies in the event that it makes sense for the place type map to be revised. Alongside development proposals, staff will use the map to provide guidance to other entities that we work with, like the transportation department or other groups that are making plans or building on sites. So staff uses this tool as well for our long-range planning. We have this map in the PDF, but we know it's usually more helpful to view an interactive map. So we have a link on the side here. We have the draft place type map shared on our Durham Maps website, where you can layer all kinds of data on the proposed plan. You can zoom in, you can search for addresses to see what the plan says. All right, almost done. So we have a new section. This is our implementation section. It starts with a methodology for the implementation list, which I'll describe after this, and the community goals and objectives report card. So the report card part of this details equity indicators that points to data that we can start collecting or measuring to show progress and accountability to the plan. This section is not only how the plan is implemented, but it's also how it stays relevant and not frozen in time. So there are two ways we're recommending the plan to be evaluated and updated. First is policy 164 under the administrative topic. It talks about an evaluation and assessment report to share progress towards implementation of the plan. It also has language about recommending minor place type and policy amendments or identifying comprehensive amendments based on development activity or changing conditions. The second way that we're recommending the plan be evaluated and updated is the community goals and objectives report card, which is in the plan. It's described as a process for collecting data, engaging residents, so not just finishing engagement with the plan, but continuing to engage residents to track how we're doing on a biannual basis, how effective the plan is, and inform what our department's priorities should be, like Lisa mentioned with our planning department work program. So the implementation list, that is an attachment 2 in your memo. It's not part of the adopted plan. So we found a limitation with our previous or our current comprehensive plan is that in order for staff to implement these ideas and the actions, we needed some flexibility in how that's done. So we can't foresee all new legislative changes, funding, or new tools in the future, but having an implementation list helps us use it as a working document to integrate in our work programs or into our staff workflow to implement these ideas with new tools or mechanisms. So you'll see here that there are several actions that lead directly to changes in the Unified Development Ordinance. This list is an important springboard into the upcoming UDO rewrite project, which will begin shortly after this plan is adopted. The implementation list is a really long PDF in your packet, but is best viewed in a spreadsheet form so you can filter the list by departments that are responsible for each of these actions. or for leading particular actions or potential mechanisms for how they can be implemented. Okay, that is what's all in the plan document. And I just want to briefly go over what engagement round is going on now before ending the presentation. So the final engagement round before the adoption process began in late January. With publishing the plan and online engagement, we've hosted three of the 4 in-person open house meetings and 2 virtual sessions in different places and times throughout Durham. We've also reached out to groups to schedule staff visits. You can see this list here, where staff shared information about the plan and how to stay involved during the adoption process. And there's still an online survey online for folks to give us input there as well. And that's going to remain open until March 20th. So we have one final open house meeting scheduled for March 4th. That's this Saturday at 10:30 a.m. to noon at the IR Holmes Recreation Center at Campus Hills Gymnasium. For folks learning about this project for the first time, please come out this weekend to learn more. And just a note about how this engagement is different than previous rounds is that we're focused on sharing this full draft with all of its components. Previous rounds, it's been sections of the plan. So this is a chance to get familiar with what's in here, ask staff questions, take a brief survey, and direct residents to the public hearing process. So we can share some high-level information about engagement so far. We've engaged at least 170 attendees at the staff-hosted sessions. We received 66 surveys so far and have over 5,000 visits to our website. So after March 20th, we'll summarize what we've heard from residents and share with you all to consider changes to the draft plan. Here's a schedule reminder. We're aiming to have a joint city-county public hearing in August, so after your review and your series of public hearings for this. And we're using these 2 websites listed on the site or on the slide here to show, to update residents on the dates for those public hearings and ways to participate. All right. Final reminder before we conclude, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission open the public hearing, listen to any public comment, and consider recommending adoption of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open the public hearing, I just want to personally thank everyone who participated in the development of the comprehensive plan. This has been a years-long project that has taken a lot of energy from a lot of people, from multiple rounds of turnover of the Planning Commission to many different staff members, and obviously everyone who participated in the community. And throughout the process, folks really demonstrated a love and a passion for Durham and an ambition to see a better Durham. And that has been really moving for me and energizing as I continue in my role and as I continue fighting for a better Durham. I received an email from one of our volunteers today, and it was a surprising, uplifting email. As you all know, we get a lot of emails when folks don't like what's going on, and this was one where it was fairly positive. And they talked about their role as being the equity lens and championing the public's welfare for this plan, and that they were really advocates for Durham, and that they charted a new approach of understanding that will uphold the value of equity in the comprehensive plan. And they talked about the experience of working with planning staff through the pandemic, saying that planning staff was inspirational, instructive, and heartwarming, that these professionals really care about our community. And even when pivoting to Zoom, they kept everyone together and found creative ways to keep people engaged in the comprehensive plan process. Made a comment about bonding over city-county planning, which is a rare occasion. We rarely get to bond over that. We often are more divided than that. We truly had a community-designed public process, which is an incredibly rare accomplishment. We had members of the community who literally wrote and designed the policies that are in this plan. And that is something that is special, and I think makes Durham unique. It doesn't mean everything was perfect, but I think it was an important departure from the history of planning processes. And so I'd like to take a moment to recognize anyone in attendance who helped develop this plan. If you participated on a policy working group, as a community ambassador, or in some other capacity, I would welcome you to stand at this time if able, so we may thank you for the work that you've accomplished. Thank you. And I know there's some folks on Zoom as well who couldn't be here tonight, but we see you as well and appreciate your work. And then I'd like to take a moment to thank our staff for, again, the years of work that has gone on into developing this plan. So at this time, so every 2 hours we have to take a break for our closed captioners. And I don't want to get interrupted in the middle of public comment, so we're going to go ahead and take that break, not 2 hour break. Whoa. It's a 10-minute break. We're going to go ahead and take that break, so I'm really building the anticipation here. And then when we come back, we will do the public comment. At this time, we will go on recess until 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
So Tasha, how do you determine what kind of repairs are actually needed on a street?
So there are various factors that we consider. First is the PCI, what is the condition of the road as it was last rated? And then we look at the condition of the road in real time. So if the road is in good condition, we perform a specific category of repairs. If the road is in fair condition, there's another category of repairs. And if it's in poor condition, yet another category that we can apply. Cracks and the type of distress also impacts the type of treatment you will see even within the good to fair category.
The Durham Children's Initiative, or DCI, will receive $140,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funds to help our city's youth overcome barriers to living wage employment. The organization serves residents who live in the most economically underserved areas of Durham and attend the lowest performing schools. The ARPA funds will be used to support the Connect Ed to Career Pipeline program. That program will work with businesses to provide support, training, mock interviews, internships, and job placement opportunities for DCI youth. The organization will partner with Durham Public Schools to identify youth for the program and to report on school and academic achievement progress. DCI will also partner with the Latino Community Credit Union to set up individual savings accounts for each student, administer them, and report data about savings rate and amounts. More information can be found at dci-nc.org.
Here's some tips to ensure that your garbage and recycling gets picked up. 1. Your cart should be put out for collection before 6 a.m. on your collection day. 2. Your cart should be at least 3 feet from all other objects such as mailboxes, telephone poles, fire hydrants, trees, and other carts. 3. Your cart should be no more than 3 feet from the curb. 4. No vehicles should be blocking your carts. The mechanical arms on our trucks need direct access to your carts and cannot reach around vehicles. To find more information about garbage and recycling pickups, go to this web address.
Did you know the City of Durham has interpretation and translation services available? The city adopted a language access plan to provide language services and help non-English speakers have access to city services and programs without a language barrier. Through the city's language access plan, residents have the right to request interpretation and translation services free of charge, receive translation of vital documents and emergency communications in Spanish, and submit complaints of language discrimination or on the failure to adequately provide services in accordance with the city's language access plan policy. For more information on the city's language access efforts, visit durhamnc.gov/languageaccess.
¿Se está atrasando con el pago de sus facturas? Aunque deba más de lo que pueda pagar, igual sigue teniendo derechos. La mayoría de los cobradores de deudas legítimos cumplen las reglas, pero los malos cobradores de deudas no lo hacen. Infringen la ley. Así que si recibe una llamada como esta,
si no paga, lo haremos arrestar y deportar.
O como esta
es su última advertencia. Pague ya, o nos comunicaremos con su empleador para obligarlo a pagar.
Cuelgue el teléfono y reporte el incidente a la Comisión Federal de Comercio, FTC. Usted tiene derecho a ser tratado justamente de todas maneras. Eso significa que los cobradores de deudas no pueden usar lenguaje abusivo, amenazarlo con violencia ni acosarlo. Ni tampoco pueden llamarlo antes de las 8 de la mañana o después de las 9 de la noche. No pueden mentir ni hacerse pasar por quienes no son.
Soy abogado, y si no paga esta deuda de inmediato, entablaré una acción legal en su contra.
O hacerle pagar una deuda que ni siquiera existe. No lo pueden hacer arrestar, ni deportarlo, ni tampoco pueden hablar con nadie sobre su deuda. A los malos cobradores de deudas les gusta atacarlo con la guardia baja para sacar ventaja, crear una sensación de urgencia y apurarlo. Dirán lo que sea para conseguir que pague de inmediato. En su lugar, cuelgue el teléfono y reporte el incidente a la Comisión Federal de Comercio, FTC, en ftc.gov/queja. Ya hemos frenado a muchos malos cobradores de deudas. Ayúdenos a frenar más. Para más información sobre cobranza de deudas, visite consumidor.gov/deuda.
¿Sabía que la ciudad de Durham cuenta con servicios de interpretación y traducción? La ciudad adoptó un plan de acceso al idioma para ofrecer servicios lingüísticos y ayudar a que las personas que no hablan inglés puedan tener acceso a los servicios y programas de la ciudad sin la barrera del idioma. Por medio del plan de acceso al idioma, los habitantes tienen derecho a solicitar sin costo alguno servicios de interpretación y traducción, recibir la traducción de documentos importantes y de comunicaciones de emergencia en español, presentar una denuncia de discriminación por motivos de idioma o por no recibir servicios de manera adecuada de acuerdo con la política del plan de acceso al idioma de la ciudad. Para recibir más información sobre la labor de la ciudad relacionada con el acceso al idioma, visita durhamnc.gov/acceso.
Falling behind on your bills? Even if you owe more than you can handle, you still have rights. Most legit debt collectors follow the rules, but bad debt collectors don't. They break the law. So if you get a call like this,
if you don't pay, we will have you arrested and deported.
Or this,
this is your final warning. Pay up now or we'll contact your employer and make them pay.
Hang up and report it to the Federal Trade Commission. You have the right to be treated fairly no matter what. That means debt collectors can't use abusive language, threaten violence, or harass you. Or call you before 8 in the morning or after 9 at night. They can't lie or pretend to be someone they're not.
I'm an attorney and will take legal action if you don't pay this debt right away.
Or get you to pay a debt that doesn't even exist. They can't have you arrested or deported or tell anyone about your debt. Bad debt collectors like to knock you off your guard to get an advantage, create a sense of urgency, and rush you. They'll say anything to get you to pay right now. Instead, hang up and report it to the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov/complaint. We've stopped a lot of bad debt collectors. Help us stop more. For more information about debt collection, visit consumer.gov/debt.
Okay, at this time we're going to return from recess. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Staff, could one of you bring me the sign-up sheet? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to read off the names of folks that signed up, and you all can come to the podium in that order. And oh, I meant to talk to folks about this on the break. So we're going to talk about it now. This is an important issue, and it's taken a lot of time, and so we typically do 2 minutes each of public comment. And I wanted to ask the commissioners, do you all want to maintain those 2 minutes? Yes. Or would you like to provide a third minute?
Maintain 2 minutes. Since we're having more than one of these?
Since we're having more than one of these, that's a good call. Okay, we're going to maintain 2 minutes then. Does anybody has objection to that? Maintain 2 minutes, unless anybody has objection. Okay. Great, so we're going to get started. Folks are going to have 2 minutes each to provide comments. Please, as typical, you'll start with your name and address and then make your public comments. I'm going to start listing off people, and please come line up so we can be efficient. So people that signed up: Neil Ghosh, Steve George, Keenan Kunder, Patrick Biker, Christoph Washoff, Adam Abram, Mark Waller. We'll start there, and I'll call off some names a little bit later. No.
Neil Ghosh, Morningstar Law Group, 700 West Main Street. Good evening, Chair Amendolia, Vice Chair Cameron, members of the Planning Commission. I sent in an email with some written comments earlier. Hopefully you had a chance to read that. Happy to answer any questions you might have about that. Although, to be honest with you, I'm not sure I'm going to stick around for the end of the night. We'll see. I did want to just touch on a few kind of bigger picture items related to the comprehensive plan. First of all, I do want to say thank you for all the work that has been put into it and all the time that's gone into it. I would say that a lot, like most, vast majority of the comprehensive plan is really innovative, fantastic, and really good work. There are some kind of overarching issues that I want to touch on. Number one being the urban growth boundary. It was mentioned earlier that the urban growth boundary, the suburban tier as it is currently, is basically what is considered the urban growth boundary today. And that the urban growth boundary in the new comprehensive plan or the draft comprehensive plan has shrunk. That to me is something that I just can't really wrap my head around from a planning standpoint, because the urban growth boundary represents an area within which the city has determined that it is able to efficiently extend utilities to in some way. That's essentially what that means. And since 2005, when the original comprehensive plan was adopted, the technologies and development practices have only gotten better. So I can't really understand why areas that in 2005 were viable for development are now seen as not viable for development. I see that I'm running out of time. The other thing I want to touch on is just the place type map. I think it's really well done, really well thought out. I think it lacks some guidance with respect to, like, on how small a scale would you implement mixed use type of development. You know, those mixed use place types, I think, are supposed to be representative of an entire area, but how does it work for a single parcel that's in there? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening to the commission. My name is Steve George, 5501 Kemp Road. Could we put up my map there? Thanks, Alexander. Also, we'd like to thank everybody and say great job on the comprehensive plan. Generally, we think it's very, very well done, and a lot of good work has been put into it. We have one item that we would like to propose a change to the plan and to the boundaries. If I could have that. What you see up on the map is, this is Kemp Road, near where Virgil Road intersects it, just south of Route 98. This is a property that is on both sides of Kemp Road. And right now, the urban growth area is Kemp Road. They're proposing it as Kemp Road, which comes right down on the side there. We would like to propose that the area that's in red, outlined in red there, be included in the urban growth boundary. And there's a couple reasons for this. First off, as you can see, as we said, this property is bisected by Kemp Road. So part of it already is in the proposed urban growth boundary on the west side of Kemp. The portion on the east side is what we're proposing be included into the urban growth. Second point is, this parcel is immediately adjacent to the Searles facility, the Southeast Regional Lift Station. It is directly across the street, is basically touching the Searles station. So it does not need any massive infrastructure to get to this area or to improve this area at all. It is ready to go. And when the Searles was built, this was one of the first areas that was designated as a growth area for that station. The third item is, it is our understanding that the current proposed urban growth boundary, which goes down Kemp Road, was drawn where it is. Can I, one more minute? Can I do that? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Keenan Condor from 610 West Morgan Street. I'm attorney for Morningstar Law Group, and I'm representing Jack Smith LLC, owners of 81 acres of land at 877 Patterson Road. That is currently within the suburban tier and available for annexation and development. But under the new urban growth boundary, this property would be removed from the urban growth area. So for those of you that don't know, Patterson Road is about due east out of downtown. And while the removal of this area from the urban growth area would suggest that this area is like purely of rural character. That could not be farther from the truth. If you look at this site on GIS, it's actually surrounded on 3 sides by areas that are included within the UGB. Additionally, it is within a 5-minute drive of a Food Lion grocery store, 5-minute drive from Neal Middle School, East Regional Library, and Oak Grove Elementary School. Additionally, it is within a 15-minute drive of Research Triangle Park, our area's largest employment center. So therefore, developing residences on this 81-acre property really makes sense and is consistent with the comprehensive plan's goal to create a 15-minute city. Again, we as Durham County need to build 160,000 new homes. We need to provide 160,000 new residents by 2050, and you're not going to find a better large site as this one. Now, we understand that this location has some infrastructure challenges, but those are current. We ask that the city take into account developers' willingness to pay for and help provide those those needed infrastructure capabilities, so that a site as good as this one, that is within that 15-minute goal, can be developed into residences for the 160,000 new people we are going to add to Durham County. So overall, we just ask that this property at 877 Patterson Road be included within the urban growth area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Amendolia, Vice Chair Cameron, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Patrick Biker. I live at 2614 Stewart Drive. I'm an attorney with Morningstar Law Group. I'm here tonight representing TAFNC LLC, which owns approximately 80 acres of undeveloped land in an area known as Arrowhead, which is bounded by the Orange County line, Cornwallis Road, and Irwin Road. Dr. Andrew Huang, who owns another 55 acres in Arrowhead, and Durham County farmer Mark Waller, who owns and farms over 40 acres in Arrowhead, support TAFNC in this effort to locate Arrowhead within the urban growth boundary. While no one has more esteem than I do for Scott Whiteman and his team in the planning department that has worked on the urban growth boundary, I am deeply disappointed by what appears to be almost no regard for the concept of vehicle miles traveled in the evaluation of Arrowhead. The reality on the ground today is that Arrowhead has better infrastructure than some areas shown on the place type map inside the urban growth boundary. The overriding reason to include Arrowhead in the urban growth boundary stems from research done over 10 years ago in a Forbes magazine article entitled America's Most Gas-Guzzling Cities, which looked at the detrimental effect of rising gas prices on individual metropolitan areas. That article states, quote, "The booby prize for the metropolitan area that suffers the most from rising gas prices goes to North Carolina's, you guessed it, Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill region. The cities and suburbs of the Triangle are close enough that people don't think twice about driving from one to the other, yet in doing so, the average household racks up 21,800 miles per year. Has anything really changed in the last decade in regards to the Triangle's commuting patterns? I think not. Accordingly, it behooves us to think about our region and the need to put new housing within a pretty short distance of our region's top private employer, Duke University. Doesn't it make sense to encourage future Duke health workers to live in Arrowhead with a 4-mile commute as opposed to, say, Mebane with a 20-mile commute? In conclusion, in regards to infrastructure, it's important to note that there's water and sewer within Arrowhead already at the Duke School for Children.
Patrick.
Yep, and that gravity sewer can serve this area today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission, and thank you. My name is Adam Abram. I'm the owner of Tafnick LLC that Patrick spoke to you about. We own 82 acres, and my neighbors, the Wangs, own 90 plus acres, and my friend Mark Waller owns another 40 acres in the area. The Arrowhead district that we're talking about is along Irwin Road between Cornwallis and Curley Road. This area is already served partially by sewer, but remains outside of the city limits. So we have a comprehensive plan where we're surrounded and creating a donut hole in our urban growth boundaries of an area that will be left as estate housing when we have water and sewer and the opportunity within 6 minutes of the area's largest employer, Duke University, easy to create in the future, access by bicycle, and it's very close already by car, and we'll be surrounded. This is an accident of history that should be corrected. Taxpayers will pay the bill for excluding this area from the urban growth boundaries, because what will happen is we will have estate lot housing in this area exclusively, with people enjoying all the benefits and the employment of the city, but not paying for the city services that they are thriving from and that we all enjoy. I'm one of two, I believe, maybe three, property owners in this area who actually operate farms in this area. This is not an area, as some of my friends believe, that is ripe for long-term farming, agricultural use. This is an obvious in-city area surrounded by the city of Durham. Thank you very, very much for your time and attention, and thank you for your service.
I'm Christoph Boshoff. I'm reaching out to you as a member of a group which owns approximately 300 acres of land on Cheek Road, all the way to Redwood Road and Creech Road. The notching of the existing borders as part of the proposed changes to the urban growth area will reduce the property value by as much as 90%, a move that will be devastating to our almost 20-year endeavor to invest in Durham and the community. We bought our first parcel in 2005 and acquired additional adjoining parcels over the years to have what we have today. From the beginning, we were included in the Durham CGA and had been promised connections to water and sewer by Durham personnel from the outset. When we received the public information notice from Durham last week, we were surprised and extremely disappointed, to say the least. In the notice, Durham indicated they are proposing to shrink the urban growth area, which will eliminate the opportunity for properties who used to have connection rights to municipal water and sewer. The following reasons were provided in the notice: protect rural character, protect drinking water sources, protect environmental sensitive land, accommodate existing residents, provide enough housing for future population growth, and also accessibility was mentioned. Proposal to protect the rural character, the proposal reduces the UGA by 7,000 acres, shifting only 3.6% of the total area to rural protection, arguably a negligible addition to the character of the rural Durham. Number two, protecting drinking water resources. Stream restorations were implemented on our property. Holy cow. I guess y'all have been working since 2019, and now we have 2 minutes to talk about it. I just think this is a little bit unfair. Unfortunately, I guess I'm done, but thank you. I'm not even close to being through.
Thank you. Next we have Mark Waller, Randy Few, Jarvis Martin, William Few, Petra Strickland, Pam Andrews, Donna Steinbeck, and Pam Williams. Begin with Mark Waller.
With due respect, you want me to be redundant, so I'll just pass on my speaking at this time.
Thank you. Thank you. Then after Mark Waller, we have Randy Few.
Hello, my name is Randy Few, 3210 Surrey Road in Durham. In December 2021, the JCCPC meeting was one of the first open discussions of a proposed change to the UGB. Recognizing the very serious implications of such a proposal to the affected property owners, It was noted in December 2021 that the proposed UGB change would likely be the most controversial part of the new comprehensive plan. Yet, it was 14 months later and less than 2 weeks before the public hearing that these property owners were informed by an undated letter that their property, quote, is likely to be affected by the anticipated adoption of the comprehensive plan. This is hard to square with the often referenced equitable engagement process and blueprint that states community engagement alone is not enough. We must place specific emphasis on those who will be most adversely impacted. Consistency, reliability, and openness, clarity, transparency, and predictability are qualities of respected and trusted governments. Over the better part of a generation, the urban growth boundary has had only slight changes. This boundary has been used by many landowners as the foundation of their future living, financial, and estate plans. The impact of changing the UGB could be devastating to many landowners and their families. Relocating a long-established border indicating the end of potential city water and sewer sends a message to other landowners inside the UGB that these boundaries are not very meaningful and that their long-range plans could be made irrelevant by the next comprehensive plan, UDO amendment, or meeting of the city or county elected officials. Will landowners now adjacent to the new and movable UGB be punished in the future if they hold on to their land? Is selling their land to a speculator or developer now better than risking a future where that choice may not exist? I would encourage you to fix what seems to be some inconsistencies in the proposed UGB and encourage you to leave private land parcels alone. And I'll get you those inconsistencies. Sorry, it's only 2 minutes.
And I let the record state I saw about 10 unique hands raised during that portion. Moving on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Jarvis Martin, and I reside at 3608 Mossdale Avenue here in Durham. First, I would like to congratulate each of you for service. I'm a past commission member, and I had the opportunity to serve on this illustrious commission for over 8 years and understand the time and service that you put in, and I congratulate you on that. I stand tonight to echo what you have heard many, many times in terms of the concern by those of us who live here in Durham and work in the real estate and development industry about the urban growth boundary. We will hope that you will consider where it is now and the plan to reduce that line. As we all know that in this area, we have an issue here with housing supply and how it impacts affordability and the big issue that we have here concerning affordability. And we must have land to make certain that we meet the demands that is going to occur in this community in terms of housing supply. It is all about supply and demand. If we limit the amount of supply that we have in any manner, it's going to impact prices, and by impacting prices, you impact affordability, which is an issue that we all are concerned with. So I would wish that the commission would take a serious look at what's being planned and listen to the professionals and landowners that have spoken that we do need to address that. The overall plan has met approval from those in the development and real estate community, but this is an issue that we feel that must be addressed. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that I noted about 6 hands raised on that statement.
My name is William P. Few, 2621 Dover Road, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the president of Kendrick Estates Investment Corporation, which is the owner of Sheffield Farm, a 273-acre tract of land on Farrington Mill Road. This property was originally acquired by my grandfather, Dr. William P. Few, who, as you may know, was the first president of Duke University. The property was purchased by Dr. Few as an investment for himself and his family. The land is now under contract for sale and development, and it has been for about 9 months. The property development plan provides for a mix of multifamily, townhouses, and single-family dwellings on relatively small lots to provide the kind of more affordable housing that Durham and the Triangle absolutely need. The economic benefits to the property will be enormous. The development plan provides that the water and sewer extensions will not be paid for by the taxpayers of the city of Durham, but by the developers and the owners. The economic benefits, however, will be enormous. In addition to the housing, it's estimated that when the property is fully developed, it will add about $600 million to the tax base of the city of Durham. So this property has been in the suburban tier for development since the original comprehensive plan was adopted. It has been held for development now for 4 generations. So removal of this property from the urban tier will be devastating to the property owners and will be bad for the city of Durham. Thank you.
Thank you. Let the record reflect, I saw about 5 hands raised on that, with that speaker.
Hey, good afternoon, evening rather. My name is Petra Strickland. We have land on Patterson Road, close to Highway 98. We've had that in our generation for about, well, since the early 70s. You know, the goal was to use the land as retirement, you know, for retirement for the family members that are still here. And like I said, our property is on the side of Patterson Road near 98. So, I mean, you can walk to the drugstore, to the food line, CVS. I mean, it's a 15-minute drive or less to certain airports, Highway 98, all these, the land is close, like I said, to all these thoroughfares, sorry. It would be detrimental if we could not use this land for what we're intending to try and use it for in the next couple of years, be a financial hardship to our family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Pamela Andrews, 6108 Wake Forest Highway. I come tonight to speak a little bit differently than some of the other people. I'm not a developer. I'm simply a little county resident that's lived here my entire life, and I'm almost 60 years old. But I want to speak for the county residents because the county residents knew almost nothing about this plan as it was going forth. We don't get cable TV. We live out in the country. We don't have a lot of internet access. Our elderly people don't know how to get on the internet and do Zoom and stuff. And we don't get water bills, so we didn't know about this was going on. We truly did not know. We have now, once we got engaged, started attending last June. We reached out and begged after I went to a State Farm meeting last March, and I saw the first map. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to get my community engaged. Oak Grove community began to get engaged. They then went to Bahama community. We knew nothing, seriously, nothing. I'm asking for more time for our community to really learn about this plan and to really be engaged. I applaud the fact we reached out to other communities, but those of us that live out in the county have equal rights to know what's going on and to get our input. I've been very, very involved about reaching out about our environment. I know a lot of people are talking about land today, but look at what's going on in our lakes and our creeks and our stream. There is serial environmental damage that has been done. We can have communities, but yes, what are we doing to our environment? Because our environment speaks long-term history to our lives and our livelihood of everybody. Without water, without soil, where are we going to go? How are we going to sustain life on this planet? We have to look at those things. The whole comprehensive plan was built around the Southeast Study focus area, yet I look at that, it was conducted in August of 2021, and prior, my community knew nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. I promise you if I had known, I'd have been here. I've been at every city council meeting for the last year. We need more impact and time to get into this, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like the record to reflect, I saw about 6 hands in agreement with that speaker.
Hello, my name is Donna Steinbach. I live at 4825 Jimmy Rogers Road, Durham, North Carolina. Intersecting Patterson Road, so I am not for the development there because I've seen 2 significantly bad accidents happen right there, not too far from my house. Okay, I'm speaking mainly on the environmental issues and the information for the development plans. The development plan, we need the information as early as we can get it. We go to the community meetings, but have little information provided by the developers. And sometimes they wait until site plan. Well, that is past our time to provide input as citizens, and we need the information up front. So I support the policy, Policy 5. I just added some more comments on the email I sent, and I gave a copy out about how important it was to us. Okay, Policy 75. This says that 30% of the land in the area shall be placed in permanent conservation. Well, I sure hope that that 30% includes some of the east and south parts. I saw the map and I was relieved. A lot of northern area is excluded. Policy 80. I'd like to add that the Falls Jordan Lake Critical Watershed UDOs speak for a buffer of 150 feet on each side for a perennial stream and 100 feet for each side of a intermittent stream. That needs to go further out into the protected watershed. Our streams, as you know, with the issues we're having, are getting polluted, and this is one way to cut that down. Policy 82, we need to, in the Triassic soil, it's very important to let the maximum acres be 25 for a phase. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. My name's Pam Williams. I live at 2130 Adventure Trail, lifelong resident, grew up off Patterson, Cheek Road, Jimmy Rogers Road, and so does all my cousins and nieces and nephews, and 5 brothers and sisters live in Southeast Durham, so we're really familiar and invested in Durham. I'm going to just read out a few things that I'm concerned about, and one is policy number 34. I would like to add, coordinate with regional health care providers to explore opportunities to locate a full-service hospital to provide for the increasing population and ease existing overcrowded hospitals. I'd like to also note that there's like 18 policies for transportation. None of those 18 policies I address the congestion. I understand we are very walkable and want to be and heading for that, but for 43 years, I lived in Durham and worked in Raleigh because that's where my job took me, and I moved several places in Raleigh. We have to provide and alleviate some of the congestion, and I would like something like number 59 to say, as traffic congestion is increasingly becoming an issue, roadway capacity and access management improvements should be prioritized to support the future development. Prioritize improvements on congested, high accident routes throughout the county to improve the entire system. We have to all forms of transportation, transit, walkways, pedestrians, bikes, will be needed by 2050. At this time, out in East Durham, Southeast Durham, there is no proposed transit, nor are any of the developments providing for any additional transit routes. There's no bus routes provided. We have narrow roads, 9-foot roads out there on Coconut Pond, 10-foot on Olive Branch. And there's a lot more, and y'all be seeing it in my comments on the survey. Thank you, and thank you for the hard work. I know policies are hard.
Thank you. I'd like the record to reflect there are about 3 or 4 hands raised in agreement with that speaker. Okay, up next we have David Smith, Ernie Belk, Terry Sanford, Andrea Quinn, Angela Nunn, Mary Jones, Katie Rose, and Mimi Kessler.
Good evening. My name is David Smith. I'm an appraiser. I'm also the chairman of the Legislative Committee for the Board of Realtors. And I also was on the Planning Commission, actually, when they were doing the 2005 long-range plan. So I'm not as old as, I look, I guess. A lot of the things that have been said I'm not going to reiterate, the affordable housing aspect of this. But one thing I wanted to point out to you all is Durham is really constricted in how much developable land there is. If you look at the map, there's that huge swath in the north and the east that's in the watershed, can't be developed. We have Duke University, they have a lot of land. Then you have the Research Triangle Park. There's really not that much developable land. And the realtors especially, we're concerned about taking any of the developable land out of the urban growth area. Now, I know that the planning department said, there's room for 150,000 new units, but that's assuming those people that own that land is willing to sell it. You've got to have willing buyers and willing sellers. And if you don't have that, you can't develop it. And also, I kind of wonder the density. Not everybody wants to live in an apartment or townhouse. I live in a townhouse. But you'll see people that are moving out of the county. And you talk about traffic. Have you been on 85 west of Durham at 5 o'clock? All these people are going to Mebane because that's where they're going. They want a single-family house, and they can't afford them in Durham, so they're going to Mebane. Or they're going up north to Roxborough, and it's going to get worse for Creedmoor, areas like that. So, a lot of the things that the planning department has come up with are great ideas, but, forgive me, but they're sort of academic. You need to listen to the people on the ground, the realtors, the builders, people like that are on the front lines of what's going on with the real estate. And I would like to thank the planning department for their hard work, because I remember what it was like in 2005. We spent hours and hours on it. So what I would like is for this to be pulled back and maybe reviewed, some of these areas that are going to be taken out. Thank you.
Thank you. Let the record reflect, I saw about 13 hands with that speaker.
Okay, it's Eddie Belk, Adaptive Renovation Architect here in Durham, 6200 Stagville Road, 5208 Stevens Lane. We were here. We were here in 1980 when Brightleaf Square was renovated, giving Durham its first glimmer of hope that it could be reborn from tobacco to the high-tech involved community it is today. We were here in 1983 when Irwin Mill was renovated and Irwin Square was developed, and Sleepy Night Street, they had 3 or 4 active businesses, became the 100 businesses and the thousands of residences it is today. We were here in 1986 when Durham Hosier Mill in East Durham became home to 250 of Durham's senior citizens. We were here in the late 1980s when 3 farms that were depleted by land taken for the Falls of the Noose were reimagined into a nationally acclaimed development community of Trayburn Residential and Trayburn Research Park. And when we lured international companies, Merck, BioMaroe, and AW, to bring thousands of jobs to Durham. We were here in the 1990s when West Village recycled all of Liggett and Myers buildings into a neighborhood that connected Brightleaf to the center of town. We were here when 2 doctors imagined North Durham Central Park. We were here in the late 90s, first decade of this century, when American tobacco became what it is today and changed from Durham's tombstone to Durham's major capstone project. We're still here. We appreciate Lisa, Kayla, Scott, and the rest of planning for the effort they put in and what they shared with us at Bahama Ruritan Club. We need everyone's help. We need to still be here, and we need to honor those efforts and those commitments made in the past while still providing for a better future for Durham. And I'm going to hit it on 2 minutes if it kills me. But to close, I've been helping with the rebirth of Durham for 43 years. All these fine citizens have been here forever.
Eddie.
Limiting everyone to 120 seconds
Eddie,
is
2 minutes are over.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, I'll be really quick. And thank you, Eddie Belk. My name is Terry Sanford. I live at 5000 Old Oxford Highway. I am here primarily to address 3 parcels that make up about 1,000 acres. All were within the Trayburn development, all of which I developed. The This property is across the street from Merck Pharmaceuticals and north of Merck Pharmaceuticals. One piece is on the other side of Stagwell Road. It is proposed to be withdrawn from the urban growth boundary. It was originally put in the urban growth boundary in 1987 when we developed Trayburn. We had the urban growth boundary extended after a massive rezoning effort of about 5,300 acres. I think it's worth noting some of this may be done for saving green space, but it needs to be noted that the Trayburn development was 5,300 acres originally. Of that, about 26% has been developed today. That's pretty impressive. I will keep this short, and I've only got 40 seconds, but I am here to request that the urban growth boundary be re-extended in the plan to incorporate that 1,000 acres. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Katie Ross, 8135 Lowell Valley Drive, Bahama. And I would like to endorse the new proposed urban growth boundary that offers more protection to the rural areas of North Durham County. We are seeing very much attempted encroachment and the massive building developments. People want to go in there too, as all of these fine people have shown you. They can't wait to get to any open space to build densely and build to their profit. I think instead of these particular individuals, we should be thinking of the future people like my grandson, who's 8 years old, who will want to have some open space and some forest. The deforestation that has occurred as a result of all of the mass development in Durham over the last, I'll say 20 years, but it's increasing each year. So it's kind of like a algebraic increase each year. That cannot be sustained and have any hope of any natural beauty to be left in Durham. If you go to the website of Preserve Rural Durham, which is mostly southeast, you will see some really horrible examples of what poor development has done down there to the water. It's orange. They call it tomato soup, and that it's exactly what it looks like. They're mass grading. They're blasting. They're doing every assault on the environment that you could possibly think of. And they are not mitigating or replacing the trees and naturalness that they are destroying. So please think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I let the record reflect, I saw 3 hands raised in support of that speaker.
Hi. Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak about this important subject matter. My name is Angela Nunn. I reside at 1102 Parkland Place, Durham, North Carolina, but I'm also part owner of 8421 Farrington Mill Road, which is what I'm speaking on tonight. I am representing family members of 8410, 8404, 8409, 8312, 8320, myself at 8421, 8415, 8405, and 8313 and 8319, approximately 22 acres of land. We are opponents of this. We were not aware of this plan. We entered into a Farrington Mill Assembly due diligence project last year for these 22 acres. We were not aware of the pending suburban tier removal, and we want to go on record to say that we are in disagreement of that. There is water out there, and we're in a unique area in a little triangle where within 15 minutes, we can shop in Chapel Hill, we can shop in Durham, we can shop in Orange County, and we can shop in Cary. So there is plenty of infrastructure there for us to be able to have this land removed from this survey. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my opinion, and I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you. And let the record reflect about 6 hands were raised in agreement with that speaker.
I'm piggybacking on my cousin. I live at 8409 Farrington Mill Road, Chapel Hill, NC 27517. I wanted to show you, it's a little dramatic. I built in 1984, and this is the only way I could have sewage. This is what the state agreed for me to have sewage, and I think it's really unfair. And even 1984 to now, that's 40 years, right? I deserve sewer and water. My area deserves sewage and water. I want to say, how dare you take us out of that loop of not getting water? We deserve the sewer just like the communities that are, there's a community less than a mile away. They got more things than I've had since I've been there. I was raised in my area. I was born right there 69 years ago, and I'm still there. And I'd like to see a little economic growth. I would like to see my land, which is 4.5 acres. I can't do anything with my land, what the state proposed. Every year, I pay $60. 3 to 5 years, they come and tell me what my land look like and what I need to do on my land. Right now, with the way it's proposed, I can't give my children, I got 3 kids, I can't divide my land because the state said your 4.5 acres is what you need to have sewage and water. And in that sewage, it's 3 tanks, and the water spray out over in the back, raw sewage. So this is what the state want me to live with. But I'm asking you to get me out of this predicament, get me out of this sewage thing that is old. And I think we deserve new sewage. We deserve water. We already have a fire hydrant out there, so why can't we get the water and the sewage to go with it? Let's do better.
Thank you, Angela. And let the record reflect, oh, sorry. Andrea. Let the record reflect I saw about 3 hands raised in support of that speaker.
Good evening. My name's Mimi Kessler. I live at 1418 Woodland Drive. You all are used to me talking to you about various things. And I wanted to tell you tonight, some of you, both prior commissioners and some of you on commission now, have had your doubts about the process that the comprehensive plan took. I admit that I had a little heartburn when the consultants were sent home. But I have to tell you that from participating from the beginning to now, I'm very impressed with the amount of urban engagement, apparently not so good in the suburban area, but the urban engagement with residents has been really impressive. The amount of outreach and the success that they have made in getting people who have historically been marginalized involved in the process has been really good. The community should decide what gets built where, rather than developers deciding what's going to be built. And I hear from the plan that the people are the ones deciding where there should be building and what kind of building, and that really pleases me. And it isn't over. I hope, one of the things I'm impressed with now is if you send people a letter, they tend to find out stuff goes on. And so I kind of wonder why we haven't done that. When we did EHC in 2019, if the 30,000 lots that got rezoned from single family to multifamily had gotten a letter, maybe more people would know about it. So please take it seriously. It really is remarkable what they've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Let the record reflect I saw about 3 or 4 hands raised in support of that speaker.
Hi, I'm Mary Jones, and I'm pleased to be here. Thank you, Planning Commission, for allowing us to speak. A few of my relatives had said something, but I want to say, give a little different picture. I've heard from Scott Whiteman, also got a response from Lisa Miller, because we did get the letter within almost less than 2 weeks of this meeting about being removed from the urban boundary. So we are here to speak and say that we object to that. Our property, and why I am saying something a little differently than the other relatives, we are directly adjacent to 8422 and the plan to develop 950 units. They have submitted a I think it's called a pre-submittal plan already. So we would be directly affected. So I want to kind of say that to have this area where it's mostly Black residents, say, you all 8 or 9 folk, you all left out. It doesn't seem equitable to me at all. No one has talked to us, no even a call or a letter to say we're developing this, but yet we get a letter about this meeting. So my understanding is that it's under the guise of protecting rural character, but they didn't ask us. Development is all around us. At the foot end of Farrington Mill Road is Montclair Development. Up the road is Chatham, but everybody's developing around us. So we're the ones adjacent to a proposed 950 units, and wanted to speak up that we do request that you all reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let the record reflect. I saw 7 or 8 hands raised in support of that speaker. Is there anyone else in person who would like to speak at this time? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone make a move to the podium, so we're going to move to our virtual attendees and give them a chance to speak. If you are attending the Zoom version of the meeting, please raise your hand virtually at this time, and I will start calling on folks. You all will have 2 minutes as well. Please state your name and address before making your comments. We'll begin with Jennifer Kerrigan.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kerrigan at 207 East Hammond Street. I wanted to start by saying thank you to the county commissioners for the opportunity to serve on the Environmental Affairs Board and participate in the creation of this plan. And thank you to the community members who have given feedback over the last several years. I'm actually not going to talk about the urban growth boundary. The climate action policies that include embodied carbon and consumption-based carbon more completely address a city's climate impacts because they addressed some of our biggest sources of emissions, which is how we make and use buildings, products, and food. So I specifically want to champion all of the policies and actions that address Durham's impact on the climate and environment outside of Durham, as well as inside the city limits. And in particular, supporting the actions dedicated to reducing construction and demolition waste in a variety of ways, which not only reduces waste, but also reduces embodied carbon. So kudos to the folks that wrote them in there. I'd like to see them stay. Secondly, though, to all the previous speakers who want to develop more land and create more sprawl, I'd like to just say thank you to the planners who made the urban footprint smaller. I think perhaps the developers, builders, and architects who spoke are perhaps used to the planning department only listening to them. But in this case, they did listen to the rest of the community members this time, and people have asked for 15-minute neighborhoods, which means 15 minutes without cars. Our planet also requires sustainable density, so please resist the urge to add special interest sprawl. Thank you.
Thank you. Let the record reflect about 5 hands were raised in support of that speaker. Up next, I believe is Chris Dreps.
Yes, hi. This is Chris Dreps. I live at 716 Carroll Street, and I work for the Ellerby Creek Watershed Association, as you can probably see. The Ellerby Creek Watershed Association owns about 243 acres affected by the proposed urban growth boundary change. And I'm here just to talk about that tonight. We'll have more comments, future comments regarding the commendable but hard to implement goal of 30% open space. But specific to the urban growth boundary change, we support the change on our property. Many of the lands being taken out of the urban growth area, especially on the northeastern side near Falls Lake, are already within the critical area of Falls Lake. And I'd encourage those of you who aren't in planning and are thinking about this, to go online and look at easy to find maps on the Durham Maps program of where the Falls and Jordan Lake critical areas are and where we've known they are for decades now. And most of the lands that are being taken out of the urban growth boundary are within that area, meaning that they were never intended to have water and sewer extended to them in the first place. And that's not Durham's decision, that's our state decision, and that's Durham following the state's lead on water supply watershed protection rules. So we're in support, and we know this is hard work, and we appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Let the record reflect, I saw about 3 hands raised in support of that speaker. Up next, we have John Hasbrock.
Hi, esteemed commissioners. I'm Jan Hasbrook, a 41-year resident of Durham. I reside at 13 Piney Park Lane. I'm a past president of the Home Builders Association of Durham, Orange, and Chatham County, and a 30-year realtor. I first want to just salute the staff's work. It's dissertation level. The intellectual heft is extraordinary, as it should be, because this is going to carry us through 2040. Look, recently the Durham real estate market was ranked number 3rd in the nation. Our inventory is at record lows, and without new construction, it's likely to remain low as existing homeowners are imprisoned by low rates. Durham's rentership is in the 60% plus zone. The national home ownership rate is reciprocal. The importance of home ownership to community building is well known. And if we're really trying to be equitable, 70% of Americans' wealth comes from the equity in their home. I take issue with the areas in the 2005 urban growth boundary that have been pulled from future water and sewer use, which is connection, which is tantamount to a death sentence for future development. I'd like to speak toward the concept of current master plan, adding master plan communities to these pulled areas that can address the diversity of housing that's been recommended by the report, including commercial and a mix of high density and mid density, along with detached home ownership. Look, I'm concerned that quashing development that is not in environmentally sensitive areas is what Portland, Oregon did 25 years ago, and has partially resulted in a lack of affordability and record homelessness. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Let the record reflect, I saw about 6 hands raised in support of that speaker. Next, we have Richard Goodwin.
Hi, my name is Richard Goodwin. I live at 3008 Snow Hill Road in North Durham. Like others, last week was our first notification of anything to our property status here. Our property is slated to be affected by the decisions of this board, and I have some concerns and questions regarding the intentions of Durham and future development. Our first concern is that this hearing is happening during an ongoing negotiation with the county over a sewage easement that goes through the frontage of our property. This existing sewer line services the Trayburn community as well as the industrial park off of Old Oxford Highway. And this sewage line has already leaked into our pond in the summer of 2020. I mean, we had a pump the size of a truck in our front yard for weeks to rectify this issue. So I've got some issues with our property being taken out of this urban development plan. First question I have is, how can the county expand sewer services for others while taking mine and other properties will not have access to those services. Because of the previous leakage, we've also had to substantially upgrade water filtration. I mean, what happens if this new sewer project causes issues on ours or other properties? Because we're not talking about just water that's coming from people's toilets. I mean, we're talking about pharmaceutical waste. When my pond was filled, I mean, it was pretty nasty. My wife was pregnant at the time, so it put us quite on edge. So the push to finalize our negotiations before this hearing has us just concerned. We feel that our property and others could utilize water and sewer services in the future. And removing us from the suburban tier only creates a more intricate negotiation for our land. It also heightens our environmental concerns because of our extreme close proximity to the Little River, Eno River, and other watersheds used for public drinking, not just our own. I'm also not only concerned about the impact to our property, but local environment as a whole. So the areas around us are not always, as Andrea pointed out, it can be very hard sewage or septic here. So I appreciate y'all's time. We're not for this. Thank you.
Thank you. And let the record reflect, I saw about 4 hands raised in favor of that speaker. Up next, we have next we have Curtis Walker.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Curtis Walker. I'm at 1105 Orchard Oriole Lane, and I'm calling regarding the attraction of a new grocer to the 3825 South Roxborough that has been vacant since Kroger left back in 2018. And that really creates a food desert for residents. There are affordable seniors. There are also families at Lakeside Apartments and Lakemore, now known as Avon Crossings. Related to this comprehensive plan, and just like in 2005, the existing plan, residents have to have access to their daily needs. And I certainly agree with that. But we have to do some things day to day. And without continuing to invest in your communities when you have a business leave or businesses don't want to work where they can't get big profits, or they are dealing with marginalized individuals and the city does nothing about it. In my understanding, I've talked with my HOA and other neighbors and created a group, and I was informed by the lawyer that the city or county has actually purchased the site at 3825 for potentially using it as a board of elections. And I think that totally underscores what the planning is when you have people who can't get fresh food.
Curtis, your 2 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Curtis, I might encourage you to reach out to planning staff on that one because I'm not sure. It sounded like there was more context there that might be important. And so you may want to reach out to planning staff as well. Up next, we have Lawrence Tatum.
Hi, good afternoon, evening. Thank you for hearing me out. You can hear me. I'm from 217 Bella Rose Drive in Chapel Hill, Montclair, and I have a couple of issues I'd like to address with the Sheffield Farm project. We were not informed of anything about this until very recently. We were told by the HOA was told that we did not warrant notification because we were not within 600 feet of the project. We're about maybe a half a mile down the road, and we're concerned about the infrastructure here. These roads, for the amount of housing they plan on putting in that area, will not sustain the amount of traffic. We've moved from New York City, and I know what it looks like when they're doing a traffic study. And the last traffic study that we saw was on a holiday weekend. It was a Friday, which was a holiday. So the numbers that they have generated for that traffic study are probably very inaccurate. We are also very concerned about the environmental impact. We're surrounded by several creeks and multiple water sources that construction will impact severely, as well as runoff from the construction process itself, and with all the environment, the trees and other plant life that will be destroyed, as well as indigenous animal life in the area that will be chased and destroyed by this construction. They talk about engagement. There wasn't any engagement really,
Lawrence.
because, sorry, thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next, we have Debbie Cowart.
Yes, hi, this is Debbie. I am the neighbor of two of the people that have already spoken. I'm at, my husband, Richard, and I are owners of 12 acres at 309 Patterson Road. So the people that you heard about that had 81 acres, and then the woman, Petra, that talked about her acreage, were all next to each other. And our property is actually the one right on the border of where the new boundary would be. So we're on the outside, we want to be on the inside. In fact, our property is so desirable that the city of Durham not recently, a couple of years ago, used our property, part of the side of our property to put in the new sewer system that's all along Highway 98. I don't want to repeat what people have said. I just want to kind of speak to how our property is incredibly accessible, and it meets 5 of the 6 goals that you have in your plan. I read the plan, it's very impressive, and you've done a lot of work, and I thank you for that. But like, it's very accessible. There's sidewalks. You can walk from our property to CVS, to Walgreens, to Food Line, and to gas stations and so on. So it's, and it also is accessible to like 10 minutes from Durham, to downtown Durham, and 15 minutes to Briar Creek. So it's accessible by transportation as well. And there's a bus stop that's not too far away as well. There's a number of businesses in that area, small businesses, over at least 20, because there's 2 shopping centers right at the corner of where we live. We're at 98 and Sharon Road, and Sharon turns into Patterson Road, so we're right
Debbie?
there. Yeah.
Those are your 2 minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Carol Budd. Oh, sorry. Also, let the record reflect I saw about 2 hands raised in support of the previous speaker.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right, my name is Carol Budd. I live at 3504 Redwood Road. And of course, me and my family are against any future development, and we appreciate the changes of the urban growth boundaries and our property and surrounding property being removed from that. Of course, the Cheek Road, Redwood, Patterson 98 sections, we believe that they should be protected from further development indefinitely. We should really be focusing more within the city when it comes to emergency services, schools. There's been a lack of first responders in the past year with ambulance and police. Bus drivers have not been enough of them really to sustain taking the kids to school, including my own, for the past 10 years. She often does not even ride the bus because there's not enough room. Traffic is pretty excessive in this area during busy times. a lot of us are also use our property to hunt or farm or trying to be part of the farm preservation program currently. So encroaching developments and annexation of our properties would negatively impact us. So I really feel like expanding within the city that exists now, creating affordable homes within the city limits of where there already is development is better, focusing on improving transportation, et cetera. A lot of people speak on affordable homes, but 6 additional properties per acre or more, it seems very excessive, especially for this area. And also we'd like to ask that social media, websites, news articles or something be more available for us for meetings. I think it says something that the surveys having such a low response and versus how many people are within the city kind of goes to show how much information has been gone out versus, so how many citizens are there online versus how many developers are there.
Carol.
And also, yeah.
Your 2 minutes are over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And let the record reflect, I saw about 6 hands raised in support of that speaker. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight that has not had the opportunity to yet? If you're in the Zoom meeting, please raise your hand at this time. If you're in person, please come to the podium. Okay, currently seeing none. Anyone who did not feel like they were able to fully give their commentary tonight or would like to provide additional comment to either the commission, that you can email either the commission or you can send an email to engagedurham@durhamnc.gov to provide your comments. We will work to organize that and make sure if you send it to the Engage Durham email, they will send it to us as well. If you already know our email, I always forget because it's like way too long. But you can email us directly. Some of y'all probably have it memorized. At durhamplanningcommission@durhamnc.gov. So you can email the Planning Commission, you can email Engage Durham at durhamnc.gov to get your comments in. So now you all get to talk. Who wants to start with questions and comments for staff? Commissioner Carmen Williams.
Staff, right?
That is the intent. If you would like to provide a statement at this time, you obviously have the right to. There will be further opportunity to make statements, but most of it's questions and comments for staff, yeah. You can also ask questions of residents too, if you have questions for specific residents.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be brief. Thank you, everybody, for your time and your speaking. As always, I appreciate the information that was given. So as far as what was presented tonight, as far as community engagement, some of the developers feel as though that they just got notification of this within the past 2 weeks. Some of the residents feel like there hasn't been enough time for them because they live in rural areas to actually dig deeper into this, even though they seem to be in support of it. Is there an opportunity for more engagement? And I already know the answer to that because they had a meeting that was scheduled and they postponed it to after this meeting. And I'm quite certain that that was strategic to make sure that following the meeting tonight, that there would be an opportunity for engagement. So I know that these efforts are ongoing and this is a preliminary portion of the process. So am I correct in my, I guess, thoughts? I don't want to call them assumptions.
Hello, Lisa Miller with the Planning Department. So there were a few questions packed in there. Certainly our final engagement event during this engagement period is Saturday. Anyone is welcome to come to that. It is at the Campus Hills Recreation Center on South Alston, and it is at 10:30 a.m. It is an open house that runs until noon. If there are other questions about that, we're happy to answer them. The online survey is going to be open through March 20th. We're going to be pulling all of that information together to bring back to this forum with the best of our ability to kind of organize it so that you all can work through it as you're considering your recommendations. One of the things that we know happens is that the further we get along in a process, the more people see how things might impact them, the more they pay attention, the more that they care. We certainly have not reached every single resident along the way. We understand that. It's challenging. We have reached out to specific groups throughout the entire process and haven't always gotten interest. So some of the folks who we are hearing from, I think a lot of that is understanding what the plan is actually saying and then starting to better understand how it's going to impact them, as opposed to earlier when we were asking for ideas to incorporate into the plan. So all of that being said, we're at the point where the comments that we're hearing from residents, this is our opportunity to look at all of those together, to bring that to you all and to understand what to move forward to the City Council and County Commissioners to consider edits and revisions to this plan as we finalize the process.
Thank you very much. I do want to acknowledge that I understand that you guys are approaching this charrette, and the charrette is a very difficult and a very involved process. So thank you very much for what it is that you're doing. And I understand that engagement sometimes can be like pulling teeth until there's an infection. And once there's pain, everybody wants to address it when they probably could have just brushed their teeth a little more. So I get it, right? So thank you very much for that. I definitely have a comment, and I will continue to be brief. And for the residents of Always, we hear you, we appreciate you. For those of you all who have land and you're concerned about your ability to develop, sounds like to me this land has been there a while, so I guess we kind of been needing housing for a long time, so I'm not sure why it took this for you to address the concern, but I'm glad you're here. Thank you. The sense of urgency can't be because now someone says you can't, when people been needing housing. So, and I'm a lifer in Durham. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments and questions? Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, I just had a question on procedure here. I think I know we're taking a lot of notes and comments from different folks, if there's a way to summarize before our next session as far as some of the things that we'll get it into minutes and everything, but I think that would be good to kind of look at it and see what comments were made in this meeting, as well as coming into the March meeting. So again, I do appreciate a lot of the effort involved, and certainly the effort of compiling all of this information and certainly making it available for us. A couple things I'm noticing is just things like reaching out to county residents and certainly the boundaries of the urban growth boundary itself. I think that seems to have a lot of attention. So just a few comments there, and just the thought that procedurally maybe we can go for that, and I'll be done for this right now.
Commissioner Valentine.
Yes, so it sounds like the engagement efforts that are going on in the city seem to be working, very well. And so why don't we just replicate those efforts in the rural communities? I think you spoke a little bit to that. Could you speak a little bit more to your efforts in that regard?
Yeah, so I can say that our engagement efforts have focused on having multiple events where we're working to reduce barriers that are held throughout the city and county. So when we've done big events, we've tried to have them oriented in different parts of the city and the county. We have one of the bigger challenges, which I think residents in the county have mentioned, is so as we're starting that work, getting connected to residents that are less connected, particularly as we were doing work during the pandemic. We reached out through some of our county departments who work with rural residents to have focus groups early on in the process. That was one way, and that was, we heard a lot of really good feedback. That was early in the pandemic, where we were hearing about some of the logistical issues with internet access for families that had students at DPS that were trying to do remote school, that we were able to connect with folks at the schools. So we've had success. We've also had a lot of development in edges of the city, edges of the city that are the county, that are creating a lot of concerns and issues. And so I think that this concern, the level of concern is probably bound to happen in part because of that. We are going to continue to try and improve how we're working with county residents, and this is not, the end of the line for our work on the plan. We want to continue to hear from folks through the adoption process, but we're also looking forward to beginning the implementation work and having residents help us work through the intricacies of this. So there's going to continue to be opportunities for us to improve our ways that we work together with county residents.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner Davis.
So I just have one quick question for staff about the last meeting that's coming up. I went to the first one that was at the Bahama Ruritan Club, and I was, I was shocked because I thought it was going to be set up differently. But that's not really my point. The point that I'm making is the maps, I guess, that were shown there, it didn't show the lake, so they were green, right? And so the person that was there, when we asked her about it, she didn't really know. She just was kind of confused whenever I started asking her about it. And then Pam was there, so she kind of, helped us, and Commissioner Chigueras was there. But so I don't know if we can, fix that at the next meeting.
It's been fixed already. Okay. Thank you. That was an example of us trying to be very responsive to input we're hearing that we can adjust along the way. Thank you.
Commissioner Cease.
Thank you to everyone in the community and to staff, and for everyone who has participated to date. There will clearly be lots of opportunities going forward, perhaps not as intense as some of the outreach in the city has occurred. A question. There was a reference, I believe, in the presentation to a calculation of something on the order of 150,000 housing units, potentially to be generated out of the parcels identified within the proposed urban growth boundary. My question is, to make that calculation, what assumptions went into that number?
So those assumptions they're actually in the table that went by very quickly. So we went and we took the place types that would be primarily residential, assumed some level of build out based on what we'd expect. Like for the greenfield sites, it would be much higher, where for things that are redevelopment, like the transit opportunity areas, they'd be significantly lower. Just to give us an idea of how much could we accommodate, and do we have enough land within the urban growth boundary?
Okay, and just real quickly on that point, I noticed in the place types map that many of those apartment townhouse neighborhoods actually are just mapped over stream corridors and wetlands and things like that. Were those like environmental constraints extracted for that calculation?
We did back out the ones that we knew, and then kind of assumed in the densities that there would be, streams and other things on some of those sites.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. And then just a brief comment. Obviously, there's much of the conversation tonight has focused on the urban growth boundary. I think that it's important, and one of the real strengths of what is crafted in this plan to date is that, independent of the individual property owner conversations, which I think are very hugely important, obviously on a family level, on a generational level, on an engagement level, that for the objectives of equity, for the objectives of kind of environmental concerns, for the objectives of emissions, kind of contemplating climate change, et cetera, that the larger question of, I should say, the question that's larger than where we build is what we build and how we build. And I think the plan has a lot of very important information to address that point. Now, that doesn't minimize the concerns with the urban growth boundary, but to me, I think the concerns that we've heard here expressed tonight are very legitimate and very understandable. And the lens that I look through it most commonly is the point that was raised, I believe, by one of the speakers at Arrowhead, or the Arrowwood triangle, is just the location efficiency, or vehicle miles traveled. The location efficiency of some of these parcels that are proposed to be removed from the urban growth boundary on that western portion of the county and in the southwestern portion of the county is exponentially higher than some of the other areas on the north. And so my concern is that in this question of engagement, that we don't just lump all these areas under the kind of framing of environmental concerns, because there are a lot of other concerns that the plan speaks to that have to be addressed in that process. Because, yeah, I'll stop there.
Other questions or comments?
I just want to echo that last point that Commissioner Cease made, just for the record.
Sure. One thing I do, if it's okay to say now, we'll take all the comments we got tonight on particular aspects of the map, whether it's the urban growth boundary or the place type map itself, and kind of collect the ones that are similar in nature or they're in the same area, and then at your next meeting we can go through each one in detail and have you all discuss all the aspects of it and whether you would recommend leaving it out or putting it back in.
That's helpful. Other questions and comments? Commissioner Baker.
I've got lots of comments, but I think just for tonight, I've got two pretty simple questions. I think the metrics and indicators are really important so that we can track the progress that we're making and track the success of the comprehensive plan and its implementation. So my question with the indicators is, I see that they're not yet created. What's the progress on that? What's the timeline for that? Because I would have loved to have seen them as part of this. So how long do we have to wait until we see those? The second question is, and as part of that, I'd be interested to see an analysis of new growth and rezonings. I'd also love to see, for us on the Planning Commission, sort of a true work plan when we vote on that shows very clear timelines and a list of projects and when those will be started, how far along those projects are and when they're anticipated for completion. The second question I have is, there are a lot of actions, so what is the plan for the prioritization of those actions? And when can we expect to see that?
Lisa Miller, Planning Department again. So for the implementation portion of the plan, we wanted to make sure that we were sharing information about how we're anticipating to undertake and to evaluate the implementation. We also wanted to make sure there was enough flexibility to, as we are going through this work, Kayla mentioned in the presentation, we want to be continuing to be in conversation with residents, with the community, to make sure that our plan, once it's adopted, can be more of a living document than our last plan, so we don't get to the point where we're 18 years out and it's been modified some, but it hasn't kept up with our changes and priorities. So our intention is to begin developing pulling together and understanding kind of baseline data around the equity indicators, kind of as we're closing out this work and starting to work on implementation. So we'll be developing that baseline information. We would be glad to be sharing and getting feedback from you all as we do that, and be looking to share that information out publicly as well. We want to then have a chance for the new plan to start having some impact before we're doing a first assessment. So we'll collect that baseline data kind of as we're closing out the plan this year, and then the plan calls for in 2 years, we'll be doing the report card the first time. So I think that was your first question. And the second question was around actions and prioritization, is that right? Okay. So we've taken all the actions and we've kind of put them into we've done the first step of just kind of starting to create the implementation list. It's not a complete document. We know that we need to be working with city and county staff, with Durham Public Schools, with other organizations in order to try and figure out. There's a lot of places where the policies are aligned with things that other departments and agencies are starting to work on. So there's some things that I think we'll be able to say, like, these are in progress. The implementation list is, its first iteration is, these are the departments who we imagine would make sense to lead this work, and these are other departments that would be good to have involved. Where there are planning department items or some other specific items, we're calling out a particular mechanism that we think is likely to be the place where those actions would live. Like on our work program, or it would be part of a UDO text amendment, things like that. So our work with departments and kind of sharing that information out is going to be where we start getting into prioritization, understanding what things have more barriers to being accomplished that maybe aren't prioritized in terms of finalizing them, but are kind of working on slowly in the background. There are things identified in that list that we would need to actually advocate for legislative changes. So that's kind of another bucket that we can, so we're trying to organize the information in a way to be able to go through those steps in more detail with departments. So that's what I can share at this point.
Okay, so we're coming back to that first question about indicators. So we're going to see a report card, and it's going to be an annual report card, but it won't start for 2 years.
It's a biannual.
Biannual.
Yeah, every 2 years.
Every 2 years. Okay, so the first one would be in 2 years from the adoption. So will we know what the indicators are in 2 years or 6 months from?
So like I mentioned, we'll be working on creating the baseline data that would say before we started actually trying to implement the comprehensive plan, this was data around the indicators. So the intention is to try and have that data this year. And then in 2 years, we would be looking at what has changed and trying to understand that. And as part of reporting that information out, we're anticipating doing community engagement, having conversation where we're hearing from residents, are there differences in priorities that have come up as things are changing in our community in the last 2 years, having that be an opportunity for those conversations to be happening regularly.
Okay. I would like to see that, move quickly, as quickly as possible.
I understand.
And the prioritization of actions, I think is really important because it's sort of what do we do after this is adopted? What are the 5 big things that the city's going to do? There's only so many staff members. There's only so many resources. What are we going to prioritize? I mean, there's a long list, and I'd love to do all of them, but where do we focus our efforts? And I think that's important to start talking about now.
If I could mention one other thing with the action items, the city at least is working on a new strategic plan. The draft actions from the comprehensive plan have been pulled into that process to see if there are ways that different departments can be prioritizing and working on those as part of strategic plan initiatives. So hopefully we'll see some progress there as well.
No questions or comments? Commissioner Davis.
I have one more question for you, Lisa, before you sit down. So I live in the county, and so I want to just in the northern part. So after the meeting we had in, I think it was October, right, in 2022? Maybe it was before, I don't know, I don't remember, but.
We've had a few meetings, so I'm not sure which one you're talking about in particular.
Okay, so where, I feel like after that meeting, that was whenever they first, explained the new plan to us. And so I feel like after that meeting, there was a lack of public trust with that. So how is the planning department going to, moving forward, try to engage residents in the county? It's, at least the northern part of the county. I know they lack trust up there. I can't speak for other parts of the county, but, how are y'all working to do that, and how are you working to communicate with residents?
Sure, I think that's a great question because it's definitely building trust is something that I think we need to work on across the community as local government. Something we've been trying to start to work towards, and we have a ways to go still. I think that part of what this process has done is it's connected us with people in the northern parts of the county. So we know there are people we hear from a lot. There are people we can communicate with. We have the Raritan clubs have been a great resource for sharing information. I know there was a lot of frustration about the Bahama meeting in particular, with some confusion about the format of the meeting. But we've tried to be responsive to kind of those requests for additional opportunities for conversation or providing input. We'll continue to try and do that the best that we can with our resources. We know that county residents care, and we're going to continue to try and work with y'all to improve things. But I feel like we have a very cordial interaction even when y'all get frustrated with us. So I appreciate that. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? You are less chatty than I expected. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute recess at this time. I'm actually going to make it a 15-minute recess. We're going to take a recess, and we will come back at 8:45.
I was looking for an opportunity, and an old friend of mine suggested that I apply at Go Durham. The community really relies on us, on Go Durham public transportation.
Well, I like driving a bus because of the friendly culture. I love it in the morning when people greet me, good morning, they give me a friendly wave, they appreciate you. And that goes a long way being a bus driver in Go Durham.
Anything can be achieved here. You can come in at the bottom and you will be able to excel in fairly a short amount of time. Here, I started as an operator and I'm here now as an operator training specialist. So as long as you stick to it, you can excel.
The perfect candidate that would excel at Go Durham is someone with tenacity, someone with drive, someone who wants to make a difference for their community.
You have to be people-oriented, you have to be experienced, and you have to be on hands, ready to go, but with the proper training, it's just like driving a car.
So as a new driver with road training, come in and you see me and I'm gonna make sure you have all the tools to succeed.
They give you a lot of input and they work with you step by step. So you won't be alone in this.
To anyone considering working for Go Durham, you won't regret it. Please come, please apply. We would love to have you join the Go Durham team.
We don't always agree who to pull for on game day, but we all can agree that litter is bad for North Carolina.
See a pothole? There's an app for that. Missed pickup? There's an app for that. Need to set up water service? There's an app for that too. Introducing the One Call app. Report your service requests online on your schedule. Just download for free from the App Store or Google Play Store. Then, sign up and start using it to report problems, check the status of your service request, or just find out more information. Try the Durham One Call app today.
My younger sister was someone that never got involved with bad people. She was a selfless person, and her life was taken away by her boyfriend due to gun violence in front of her 3 younger kids.
I was in my car. I heard loud gunfire. Didn't know where. I got shot was dramatic and experience I couldn't, want anybody to live through. Gun violence can happen any given time, anywhere. I'm truly blessed to be alive today.
The person that did this to my sister is still on the loose, and we want justice for my sister and for my nephews. We don't want for this to happen to another woman out there. Don't stay quiet. Don't be afraid to talk.
I like being there for people. I like when my investigators and I go out there that we're out there with a specific purpose, and that's to try to bring somebody to justice on behalf of a citizen to get a violent criminal off the streets.
I'm born and raised in Durham. I still have family members here, classmates, friends. It's personal for me.
We see on the news constantly the numbers of shootings is in the hundreds. Last year is pushing 1,000. So you would think that around every corner there's somebody with a gun ready to shoot. But through our investigations, we've learned that the percentage of the population that's committing a lot of these shootings is very low compared to the number of shootings were actually happening. Members of the community can help make it safer. If they've seen something in their neighborhood, please call us, let us know.
There are creative ways to be able to solve crimes. And that's through anonymous information through avenues such as Crime Stoppers.
Getting that information in the hands of police and investigators, it's critical because a lot of stuff we can have ideas of what happened, but if we can't prove it in court, justice isn't going to be served. Just give us the information to help point us in the right direction.
The Durham City Council meetings and Planning Commission meetings are now available to live stream on all devices via the City of Durham's social media accounts. To watch, simply go to City of Durham NC on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Devices include phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, streaming boxes and sticks, and smart TVs. The easiest way to view the live stream on smart TVs and streaming devices, such as the Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV, is via the YouTube app. Now you can follow along with the latest developments in the Durham community at dinner, your kids' game, the mall, in bed, during a breather, in the bathtub, and even on the International Space Station.
I count on Durham for awesome adventures and great bike shops.
I know I can count on Durham for great sports in every season.
I always count on Durham for amazing cultural events.
I count on Durham for its innovative ideas and the determination to bring them to life.
I count on Durham for community and a place for everyone.
I count on Durham to do a good job and to celebrate our success.
Did you know that the City of Durham counts on these individuals? In a city of more than 260,000 people, you're looking at residents who are making their voices count, people who care about the past, the present, and the future of the City of Durham. And you know what? It doesn't matter how mature
or young,
whether you're passionate about the economy,
the arts scene,
or the plight of the homeless.
In fact, we have nearly 30 boards, committees, and commissions that you can participate on.
The requirements are to be a Durham City resident and be current on your Durham City and county taxes.
Durham is your home. You can count on Durham to be there for you.
Can we count on you to be there for our city?
Can we count on you to be there for Durham?
Can we count on you to be there for our city?
Can we count on you to be there for Durham?
So come on, get involved. Apply today. We can count on Durham, but can Durham count on you?
Okay, we are going to return from recess at this time. It's getting late. Okay, so we're gonna have a quick conversation just about what the next next few months are gonna look like. I'm gonna relay to all of you what staff and I just discussed as a proposal, and feel free to provide input. So it seems very clear that the growth management strategy, which includes the urban growth boundary, is the primary topic that folks are wanting to address. So we're proposing that at our March meeting, we focus on the growth management strategy and also the place types, because the place types go very hand in hand with that. And if we choose to make changes in the urban growth boundary, that will have implications on the place types for those parcels. And then in our May meeting, we would prioritize the policies and I suppose the implementation plan as well. We may do something new that we haven't, well, we probably will. We probably will do something new that we haven't done before, because I was talking with staff, and there are about 6 kind of clusters of parcels that were some of the prominent pieces of conversation at night about being removed from the suburban tier in this urban growth boundary. And so we may need to do some sort of straw poll on each of those clusters to get some sort of consensus about whether or not we think they should be included or excluded from the urban growth boundary. And so procedurally, when we do that, we're gonna kind of have a conversation about it, and then I'm just gonna get like a vibe check. It's not gonna be a formal vote, there's not gonna be a motion or anything like that. It's just gonna be like, do most commissioners jive with one direction or another? And if I need something a little bit more clear, we might do some raised hands, but it's gonna be more informal. What else? So to that end, please come to the March 28th meeting ready to discuss the growth management plan and the place types. If you have questions that come up as you review those for staff, please send those to staff as soon as possible so that they can come prepared with content for that. And I think if you notice like cross sections with the policies as you are reviewing the growth management strategy and the place types, I think it's appropriate to go ahead and add those comments as well so that we are still taking this in holistically. Just know that it will be more dedicated to the policies and implementation. And then I think as well, like as soon as you're able to, providing comments and questions to staff about the policies would be great. But yeah, keeping in mind, we will discuss those further in May. One outstanding question that I didn't confirm with staff or not yet, and I'm just gonna like raise to you also, you're aware, I have contemplated whether or not we will like approve or make recommendations on chunks of this plan before providing a final recommendation on the entire plan. Because I want to enable, if folks are like, I don't like the growth management strategy, but I like the plan, you can vote no on the growth management strategy and still vote yes on the plan so that the elected officials kind of see the nuance of how we view different parts of the plan. I have not decided that officially yet, and staff might give me dirty looks for adding more procedure, but that is an idea that I'm putting out there, so we may go that direction just for your awareness. Anybody have questions, comments, concerns with any of that? Commissioner Morgan.
I had a question. I mean, with what you're talking about, are you looking to unpack the comprehensive plan into certain subject areas so that we could actually weigh in on that? Is that what you're kind of saying, like such as different aspects of the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, so we would focus just on like the growth management strategy and providing our recommendation on that, and then doing so the same for the place types and the policies and implementation.
I think that's a good idea because, you know, there's just so much there, and obviously to weigh in and provide comments on different aspects, I think it'd be good. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Sounds great. It's time for y'all to go get some dinner. All right, this meeting is adjourned at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all. There you go. That was less painful than I. Ooh.